Chapter 617. Even Wang Ling hadn't expected that the school's summer camp would actually be held in Devil Valley. This was a 5A state-protected secret land, and even a team of experts from a state agency had to go through the agency level by level every year to apply for permission, and there was no guarantee that it would be approved. This time, it was actually directly opened up as a summer camp location for students, which was a little unimaginable to Wang Ling. He knew that Fatty Luo had been eyeing this place for a long time. In order to search for the 1,000 dried bones, the main material for making Jinka's scabbard, Fatty Luo had started planning to enter Devil Valley several months ago, and had even obtained an expert certificate. In the end, after Fatty Luo's painstaking planning for so long, the opportunity to enter Devil Valley had fallen into his lap just like that. Wang Ling vaguely had a bad feeling. He felt that what Super Chin said wasn't unreasonable. Every time there was a group activity, it felt like something big was going to happen. It was already around 4:00 at the moment, and it had already been a full 4 hours since Little Silver had left Wenxian Garden. There were several congested sections in the middle, so Driver Lu suggested that Little Silver take a detour, which Little Silver didn't refuse. In the end, Driver Lu turned the steering wheel in the opposite direction and drove the car to an unfamiliar section of the road that Little Silver had never seen before. When he had gotten in the car, Little Silver had already been wary of this driver. Then, he had looked up recent incidents involving Didi Shun Feng spirit cars online, and found information on someone called Gobbler Crazy Demon. This was the fugitive criminal suspect who had recently been involved in several robberies. Little Silver compared the information online and couldn't help sighing in his heart. He was too unlucky. It's already been 4 hours, hey, isn't it time yet? Little Silver was a little impatient. He didn't know what on earth this Driver Lu was up to. We're almost there, Mr. Silver. Lu Zhenhuo licked his lips. Because the other roads were too congested, we had to take a detour. If you take those congested roads, I'm afraid Mr. Silver won't be able to arrive even at night. The car was still moving. Through the rearview mirror, Lu Zhenhua saw Mr. Silver, who looked like a pretty girl, sitting in the back seat with his arms crossed and an impatient expression on his face. Don't be anxious, Mr. Silver. Let's listen to the music first. Lu Zhenhua smiled strangely. Then, he touched the small mechanism behind the steering wheel, and the doors were instantly sealed. He had modified the car, and when this small mechanism was triggered, it would activate the independent secret lock on the door, so that all the doors except for the driver's seat would be sealed silently. Then, he turned on the music play button, and melodious music began to play from the car stereo, but the music was mixed with something else. This stereo had also been modified by Driver Lu. It wasn't just a simple stereo. Little Silver immediately sensed it. When he focused his gaze on the sound system, he could see some white powder dispersing from the beehive-like sound port to the music, which dissolved little by little in the air and then turned into nothingness. This was a very secretive method. If one's cultivation level was too low, they would not be able to detect it at all. No wonder there were many Aurus core stage cultivators in the previous reports, and even one nascent soul stage cultivator had fallen for this trick. If one didn't have enough precautions, it was very easy to fall for this trick. Some people might be on their guard when they saw the driver suddenly turn on the air conditioner, but most people wouldn't expect a hallucinogen to be transmitted through the car stereo. As long as the music was played, the hallucinogen would spread little by little along with the vibration of the melody, turning into a stream of air until it filled the entire car. Seeing that his plan was going smoothly, Lu Zhenhua couldn't help laughing sinisterly in his heart. He had spent a lot of money to get this hallucinogen from the black market. Even a nascent soul cultivator would feel dizzy and unable to use spirit energy when standing in it, so this hallucinogen was called drunk baby drunk powder. The most important thing was that this hallucinogen could be transmitted in a variety of ways. It could be used through vibration, immersion, and so on. In order to work as discreetly as possible, Lu Zhenhua modified his car's stereo system. There was an independent groove inside that could store the psychedelic powder. As long as the music was played, the light psychedelic powder would turn into a stream of air and fly out from the small hole in the stereo system along with the melody. Even a nascent soul cultivator would only need 5 seconds to be knocked out when the hallucinogen turned into a stream of air and filled the car. At that moment, Lu Zhenhua was sneering in his heart. He looked at the time. 5 seconds had passed in the blink of an eye. Mr. Silver was in perfect condition. Lu Zhenhua. Could it be that the effect of his powder had expired? That couldn't be. He had just put this packet of hallucinogen in the car not long ago, and he had confirmed its expiration date before. This type of hallucinogen had a shelf life of more than 3 years. Furthermore, this was just a foundation establishment cultivator. Shouldn't he be knocked out by a whiff? Crossing his arms, Little Silver looked at Driver Lu's black face full of question marks and couldn't help laughing in his heart. Then, 30 seconds passed. Driver Lu met the smiling face of this Mr. Silver in the rearview mirror, and his heart instantly turned cold. Little Silver, you're that crazy demon, right? Lu Zhenhua narrowed his eyes. I don't know what Mr. Silver is talking about, Little Silver. I already saw the many mechanisms you set up in the car after you changed your appearance. You probably did something to the stereo, right? I saw some white powder inside. It's probably a hallucinogen. Hearing this, Lu Zhenhua immediately braked, and the expression on his face changed from a harmless smile to a fiendish one as he stared at Little Silver. When did you find out? I was a little suspicious when I got in the car, and only confirmed your identity after I looked up some information on the internet. Little Silver spread his hands. Lu Zhenhua found it very strange. You didn't think about running? Little Silver was even more baffled. Why should I run? You're clearly the one who should run. Lu Zhenhua, also, I've been thinking about a very philosophical question since just now. TOB or not TOB? Should I get rid of you? Because when you run into a bad guy, TOing or not TOing doesn't work. Little Silver analyzed the situation with a straight face. But when my master signed the contract with me, he said that I'm not allowed to casually kill people. If someone like you just dies like this, it'll be too easy on you. You. Lu Zhenhua gritted his teeth. He realized that this very pretty Mr. Silver in front of him wasn't at the foundation establishment stage at all. This was a tough nut to crack. Although he couldn't tell what realm Mr. Silver specifically was at, given that Little Silver's hallucinogen powder was ineffective, this person was at least a soul formation expert. Don't move. I've already sealed the car doors. Lu Zhenhua took out a crystal ball from his chest pocket. This is a spirit bullet. It will explode if I crush it. Get out of my car now and we'll pretend we never met. Otherwise, I don't mind dragging someone down with me. But as soon as Lu Zhenhua said this, he suddenly felt a sharp pain in his hand. Bah! Little Silver directly spat on Lu Zhenhua's palm, and in severe pain, Lu Zhenhua realized that his palm had been dissolved along with the spirit bullet. Ah! Lu Zhenhua let out a pained scream as his hand instantly melted like an ice cube under high heat. He was going to call the police. Police uncle. Chapter 618. Driver Lu screamed as Little Silver's phlegm instantly dissolved his entire right hand all the way to his elbow. The most frightening thing was that even though it had dissolved, there wasn't a single drop of blood seeping out of the wound. What Lu Zhenhua felt was the continuous burning pain of his right forearm being dissolved. It was as if someone had lit a lighter to roast the wound, and Lu Zhenhua's face instantly turned pale. Do you have anything to tell me? Little Silver looked at Driver Lu with a harmless smile on his face. That mouthful of phlegm just now seemed very casual, but it was actually a very meticulous operation. Little Silver could spit down to the microgram. Thus, Little Silver had specially controlled that mouthful of phlegm just now, otherwise this Driver Lu would have been directly dissolved on the spot like those two fellow disciples of the Demon Hunters Association back then, and not even his bones would have been left. Why didn't he just directly kill this scumbag driver? Little Silver's reason was very clear: his master didn't like him to casually kill people. Another very important point was that Little Silver felt that letting this kind of scumbag die just like that was really too easy. Reincarnation was a natural cycle. Who would the heavens spare? This evil driver, who had already harmed who knew how many boys and girls, probably never thought that he would receive this kind of retribution. Even if you hand me over to the police, I won't live for long. I have 3 months at most. Lu Zhenhua's face was covered in sweat from the pain and he was deathly pale. I have a terminal disease, golden core cancer. There's a tumor in your golden core. Little Silver was alarmed. Yes, and it's terminal. There's no way it can be cured. Lu Zhenhua gritted his teeth with a pained expression. His expression was very dark. So, I hope that before I die, I can bring some fear to this world. I want the entire world of martial arts to remember me. The existence of the all-conquering demon, golden core cancer, was the only terminal cancer that hadn't been cured. If it was just a pathological change in an organ, modern cultivation medicine could already completely cure it. But golden core cancer couldn't, and there were many problems involved. If a golden core cultivator's golden core was shattered, they actually wouldn't be able to live for long. Therefore, if the gold core was directly removed, for these gold core stage cultivators, it might be more painful than death. Once the golden core in one's body was removed, although the disease could be prevented, one's lifespan would be greatly shortened. Most importantly, once the golden core was removed, one would no longer be able to cultivate. Therefore, the perfect solution was to directly kill the diseased tissue inside the golden core without affecting it. But this had always been a medical problem. Furthermore, the chances of a cultivator's golden core developing a disease were actually very low. The probability was 1 in 100 million, therefore, Lu Zhenhua was one of the winners, among the 1 in a billion. A hateful person was bound to be pitiful. It was true that Lu Zhenhua was a pitiful person, but Little Silver didn't think he deserved any sympathy. Sooner or later, he would have to pay for what he had done. Little Silver felt that there was a saying that was very true: the cultivation world was vast, and everyone had a different way of making their presence known in it. There were those who did good and enjoyed the praise of the world. There were also those who did evil, and those who were notorious. Both of these were ways to make people remember. But it was a pity that what was recorded and praised throughout the ages would always be those good deeds that promoted virtue. So if you wanted to rely on this kind of notoriety to make a name for yourself in the cultivation circle, don't ever say that you were from the cultivation world. The world didn't care about you at all. Little Silver pursed his lips, then bit his finger. Before the wound healed on its own, he hurriedly squeezed out a drop of blood and directly flicked it into Lu Zhenhua's mouth. Driver Lu's pained expression was puzzled. What did you do? Nothing, I just prolonged your life. Little Silver spread his hands. Of course, there was nothing he could do about a disease that even modern cultivation medicine couldn't cure. But holy beast blood could be used to prolong one's life. Lu Zhenhua tasted blood. But strangely, the moment this blood entered his body, he felt the disease in his body ease considerably. The trembling that he felt from time to time due to the disease in his golden core had disappeared. Not only that, even the burning sensation in his melted right forearm had lessened. That drop of holy beast blood just now had extended Lu Zhenhua's life by a full 10 years. Lu Zhenhua turned pale with fright. Who the hell are you? One mouthful of phlegm had made him feel as if he had fallen off a cliff, and one drop of blood had brought him back from the dead. In that moment, Lu Zhenhua realized the gap between their absolute strength. It would be as easy as pie for this Mr. Silver in front of him to do anything to him. This guy wasn't a normal person at all, reflect on it. I'll call the police now, and you'll spend the last days of your life in prison with Soap and your cellmates. Little Silver crossed his arms and said solemnly. Lu Zhenhua realized that things weren't looking good. He wanted to get out of the car, but found that he couldn't move at all as an oppressive force froze him from head to toe. Compared with this, Mr. Silver, his weak fighting strength wasn't in the same dimension at all. However, just as Little Silver was about to take out his phone to call the police, he suddenly heard the sound of sirens rising and falling from the roadside. Little Silver was startled. It couldn't be such a coincidence, right? With two motorcycles clearing the way, they directly bypassed Lu Zhenhua's car and stopped in front of it. Then, a uniformed police officer got out of a police car behind the car and knocked on the window of the taxi. "Get out, it's a routine inspection." Lu Zhenhua's pupils immediately contracted slightly when he saw the uniform, and his body straightaway went limp like a deflated balloon. It was over, it was all over. This was from the traffic team. They couldn't stop on this road. Lu Zhenhua guessed that he had been here for too long, which was why he had been targeted. Little Silver rolled down the window and smiled at the police officer. "Hi." The police officer looked inside and noticed that there was something wrong with the expression on the driver's face, and he frowned. "Mr. Driver, please show me your ID." Lu Zhenhua frowned, looking as if he had nothing left to live for. The police officer already knew what was going on. "Since that's the case, please come with us." Also, after saying that, the police officer looked at Little Silver. "This lady, please come with us." Little Silver, 7:00 in the evening, Shanghai City's Anning District Cultivation Police Station. Little Silver arrived at the familiar police station once again. But unlike the previous two times, he wasn't wearing handcuffs this time. The people at the police station were already very familiar with this regular, and a pretty policewoman warmly made him a cup of tea. Holding the teacup, Little Silver didn't wait long in the chair in the interrogation room before Officer Gao Tian, who had taken Little Silver's statement the previous two times, pushed open the door and entered. The moment he saw Little Silver, Officer Gao's expression couldn't help twitching. Why was it this guy again? Little Silver saw Officer Gao open his little notebook and immediately began to introduce himself in a very familiar manner. Name, Little Silver. Gender, male. Single, no bad habits. Favorite things are eating, watching TV shows and playing games. It had been this process the previous two times, and Little Silver was really too familiar with it. Officer Gao looked up at Little Silver. "Why?" Little Silver was very honest. "I wanted to buy myself a collar." Chapter 6:19. Officer Gao, are you thinking about something very rude? Cupping his chin, Little Silver felt that something wasn't right with Officer Gao's expression. His face had clearly been serious just now, so why was he suddenly blushing? He was definitely thinking about something dirty. There were only a few things a person could do when they blushed. Although Little Silver had never seen anything dirty before, mainly because grenade throwing wouldn't let him, he knew a little about it. Officer Gao was ashamed and speechless. He was indeed thinking about something not so good. After all, buying a collar for himself didn't necessarily have to be for thrills. Officer Gao tried hard to compose himself and asked, "Did you buy a collar for yourself because your neck hurt?" Officer Gao recalled the rehabilitative collars that had appeared on the market before, which were used to protect the spine, so not all collars were improper. Like sea cucumber fried noodles, sea cucumbers were also divided into proper sea cucumbers and improper sea cucumbers. For example, just like authors were also divided into serious authors and those who did not engage in serious work. Yes, that had to be it. He could see that he was the one who had misunderstood. As a righteous police officer who served the people wholeheartedly, how could he think of anything else? Gao Tian. You have to pull yourself together, Gao Tian. However, Little Silver quickly shook his head. No, I bought the collar to let my master know that I'm wearing it for you. My master took me for a walk on the street. Master, walk, on the streets, Officer Gao, Mr. Little Silver, your master is. It had to be said that without knowing Little Silver's true identity at all, it was indeed very easy to make all kinds of associations from a purely human point of view. Officer Gao didn't feel good at all. This Silver in front of him was a little troublesome. Master. Master is my master. My master is very strong. Just like the lyrics. Little Silver suddenly thought of the lyrics of a song that had become popular recently. Officer Gao, what song? Little Silver directly sang. Elder brother trained his chest muscles. If you still want to walk, Officer Gao, Little Silver, our master's chest muscles are for me to walk on. Officer Gao, this matter was slightly more troublesome than the previous two, because the driver who was arrested was none other than the eating maniac who had caused a ruckus recently. Now that the gobbling crazy demon had been arrested just like that and was missing his right forearm, Little Silver definitely wouldn't be able to escape. Logically speaking, Little Silver had actually acted bravely for a just cause, but he had still been too heavy-handed. In fact, it wasn't easy to determine whether or not Little Silver was specifically responsible for the injuries. However, when Lu Zhenhua was brought into the police station with his head covered, the surrounding media, passers-by, and even the police officers who were maintaining order at the scene. Many people felt that their anger had been vented. They felt that the hero who had removed Lu Zhenhua's arm had done a great job. When grenade-throwing Senior Immortal found out that Little Silver had gone to the police station, it was actually after 6:00 that night. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had always had an ominous premonition, and sure enough, it had come true. Hello, are you Mr. Grenade-throwing? Brother Little Silver is at our police station again. On the other end of the phone, Officer Gao called Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal with practiced ease. In fact, the second time Little Silver had come, Officer Gao had cleverly saved Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's cell phone in his address book. After working as a police officer for a long time, one would develop a very strange intuition. For example, Officer Gao was able to distinguish people who might come to the police station every now and then. As it turned out, Officer Gao's judgment was completely correct. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, what did he do this time? Spit again. No one knew Little Silver better than grenade-throwing. Officer Gao sighed deeply. The suspect we arrested this time said that Mr. Little Silver dissolved his arm with a mouthful of phlegm. This should be some kind of spell, right? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded. Yes, Officer Gao, you can think of it that way. Actually, this wasn't a spell, but an ability that came with Little Silver as a holy beast. But at this stage, Little Silver's identity still needed to be kept strictly confidential. So it was actually not a bad idea to let this misunderstanding continue. Like I said, it's a spell. But Mr. Little Silver insists that it's an ability that comes with him. On the phone, Officer Gao was very gloomy. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Officer Gao, if Mr. Little Silver's phlegm really has this ability, who would dare kiss him if he got chronic pharyngitis in the future? One kiss and his tongue would be gone. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Officer Gao continued, Mr. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, the current situation is like this. The suspect, Lu Zhenhua, feels that Mr. Little Silver's phlegm caused him to be disabled, and wants to hold Mr. Little Silver legally responsible. He dares. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was alarmed. This perverted driver had done so many outrageous things, but actually dared to bite back. How could a person be this shameless? Officer Gao, although I think Mr. Little Silver's way of doing things is very satisfying, if they really want to pursue this matter, the other party can indeed try to hold him responsible for excessive defense. Suddenly, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's expression turned serious. Do you know Secretary Yen? Little Silver works for Secretary Yen. Secretary Yen, for some reason, after hearing the words, Secretary Yen, Officer Gao suddenly felt his brain tremble. Mr. Little Silver works for some leader. Officer Gao pondered in his heart. Combined with Little Silver's previous statement, Master, collar, out on the streets. For a moment, Officer Gao felt a chill run down his spine, and his entire body shivered. F***K. Did he find out something incredible? The long silence made grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frown. Officer Gao, what's wrong? Why aren't you saying anything? Officer Gao broke out in a sweat. Mr. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, can I ask you a question? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Officer Gao, go ahead. Officer Gao, is Secretary Yan's chest muscle hard? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, after taking the statement, it was already 7:00 in the evening when grenade-throwing Senior Immortal took Little Silver out of the police station. Given the vile nature of the gobbling crazy demon incident and the very mysterious Secretary Yan, the Anning District Police Station still concluded that Little Silver's phlegm was a legitimate defense. The prerequisite was that Little Silver had to cooperate with the police and testify in court. Of course, there was also the standard good and heroic citizen pennant and the media interview, which grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had rejected on Little Silver's behalf. He felt that it was better to keep a low profile. On the way, Little Silver listened to grenade-throwing Senior Immortal talk about what had happened just now, and was puzzled. Secretary Yan. Who is this Secretary Yan? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, I just made it up. Little Silver. Chapter 620. When he came back on Friday night, Wang Ling took the parents' notification form for Devil Valley's Beast King's Remains summer camp and asked Father Wang to sign it. Just like before, Father Wang didn't even look at it before he confidently signed his name, Wang Jiao, on it. His hand was like a dancing dragon and dancing phoenix, and it was impressively his signature under his real name. Wang Ling glanced at Father Wang's signature. It was the same as before, and he couldn't tell that it was Wang Jiao. This made Wang Ling sigh from the bottom of his heart. When all was said and done, he was a veteran artist in the online novel circle. After signing, Father Wang put down his pen and returned the notification form to Wang Ling. Learn to sign more of my signature. In the future, you can sign this kind of form yourself. Also, the same rules apply to this activity. Keep a low profile. If you really run into any danger, remember to leave them alive. You've already sent 3 people to prison before, so you can consider sending 1 more to play mahjong. Wang Ling. Then, Wang Ling saw Father Wang turn around in his chair and start typing. Wang Ling didn't look carefully at the content on the screen. In any case, it didn't look like Father Wang was typing, but editing something. After putting away the notification form and returning to his room, Wang Ling peeked through the door with his king's eye and saw that Father Wang was editing an article on the official account. As a top guru on the website, the number of people on Father Wang's official account wasn't any less than on other platforms. Basically, every article he published had millions of views. But Father Wang very rarely took time out to write articles on the official account. It was already pretty good if he could write 1 or 2 articles a month. Based on the style of the audience on the official account, Father Wang would use short stories to fill in some of the more popular events. Some were warm, some were funny, and some were sarcastic. Like the short stories he had published previously, the one with the highest number of views had already broken 10 million. The title was Wang Situ's Imagination, Brother Gluten and Wandering Poet. For a short story like this that was filled with imagination, it was much more difficult to manipulate than those chicken soup novels. Brother Gluten and the Wandering Poet. Synopsis. This is the story of a beggar who picked up rubbish to eat on the road and a street gluten singer, Brother Gluten. From their meeting to knowing each other. It's just like the lyrics of a song, gluten in the morning, eating happily. I met this brother, he was eating rubbish. Eating rubbish, thinking of the past, I can't imagine what his past was. Roast the gluten, tell me what's in your heart, roast all your grievances and changes over the years. Wang Ling recalled the synopsis of this short story. He remembered hearing this song in the synopsis. After Father Wang had written the lyrics, it had been directly sung by a powerful book friend. This short story, which Father Wong had adapted from reality, was still fresh in Wong Ling's memory. In the story, Brother Gluten, who had a dream of making music, met a beggar poet brother. Brother Gluten saw this beggar brother picking up rubbish to eat on the side of the road, and felt very sorry for him, so he took this beggar brother with him to participate in the Voice of Cultivation's music audition. From meeting to knowing each other, the two brothers encouraged each other. Several times when Brother Gluten was at a loss, it was the beggar brother who recited poems to him and helped him open his heart. After 3 long years of hard work, Brother Gluten finally won the 3rd edition of the Voice of Cultivation's competition. But at this glorious moment, his best brother, the wandering poet, chose to leave without saying goodbye. Many years later, in order to find this brother of his, Brother Gluten used the money he had earned from his music career to invest a large amount of cultivation resources in cultivation, and traveled the world in search of clues about his beggar brother, the wandering poet. Apart from singing and cultivating, Brother Gluten didn't forget to practice his gluten baking technique to the extreme when he missed them. He wanted to use his most mature gluten baking technique to bake gluten for his brother to eat the day he found the poet and beggar. After that, Brother Gluten's actions influenced an almighty called Daoist Maiba, who told him that there was a spell that could instantly make the person he missed the most appear in front of him. But he needed to collect spirit stones that represented power, time, space, soul, reality, and spirit. Over the next decade or so, Brother Gluten traveled all over the world to collect these 6 gems. Finally, he ground them into powder and mixed them into the flour used to bake gluten to make a pair of infinite gluten gloves. In the final moment of the story, Brother Gluten's face was full of excitement as he recalled his past with the beggar and the wandering poet, and he snapped his fingers, and then, there was no then, the story ended here. No one knew whether Brother Gluten would really be able to find the brother he missed the most after this snap, just as Daoist Maiba had said. No one knew whether this pair of brothers in hardship would ever have the chance to reunite. And no one knew whether Brother Gluten had painstakingly cultivated the gluten baking technique to the extreme just to make this ultimate gluten skewer when they met again, or whether it tasted good or not. In any case, Wong Ling remembered that it was this open-ended ending that had instantly caused Father Wong's short story to take a turn. And now, it seemed that Father Wong was writing a sequel to Brother Gluten and the Wandering Poet. Wong Ling sneaked a peek in his room. What was it like to be the son of a deadly author? It was like being one step ahead of everyone else to try something new. It was obvious that Father Wong had thought about this story for a long time. He didn't get stuck at all as he typed, and after roughly an hour, he finished writing the short story. While Father Wong was checking for typos, Wong Ling took the opportunity to watch the sequel to Brother Gluten and Wandering Poet 2. In this story, Father Wong revealed the reason why the Wandering Poet had left without saying goodbye back then. The second story said, on the eve of Brother Gluten's victory that year, the Wandering Poet learned that someone wanted to harm him. In order to protect his good brother, the Wandering Poet prayed in front of the barbecue stall. He was willing to never eat gluten again in this life for Brother Gluten's safety. This move moved Daoist Maiba, who showed up and told the Wandering Poet away. As long as the Wandering Poet was willing to split himself into 6 spirit stones representing power, time, space, soul, reality and spirit, he would be able to unleash the power of praying to the fullest. If one day, someone could gather these 6 spirit stones together and make them into a glove, the Wandering Poet could come back to life with a snap of their fingers. But the price was that the person who snapped their fingers. Chapter 621. When Wong Ling saw the ending, it was as if he could already foresee Father Wong's sequel taking a violent turn again. This was a thought-provoking and slightly tragic ending to the sequel, but Father Wong didn't directly say that the second sequel was the end, so Wong Ling guessed that there might be a 3rd or even a 4th episode later on. To be honest, Wong Ling was actually looking forward to this story. Unfortunately, it took a long time for Father Wong's official account to publish a new article. As a top-notch online guru, Father Wong actually didn't need to be like other public accounts that chased after hot topics to quickly create articles to gain attention. Furthermore, Wang Ling had in fact heard Father Wang mention some public accounts that would use unscrupulous means to gain attention, such as the recently banned official account called Second Update Sugar. In Father Wang's view, the Second Update Sugar ending was both a success and a failure. In the end, it was all for the sake of 100,000 plus readers. Unscrupulous means to gain attention for the sake of 100,000 plus readers wasn't desirable in itself. In contrast, Wang Ling suddenly felt that Father Wang's figure had grown taller. Even though Father Wang took a long time to publish an article on his official account, any one of his articles would have more than 1 million readers. For a lot of people, they had something to look forward to every day. They might not be able to achieve a small target of 100 million, but at the very least, they had to make themselves happy, to smile happily and contentedly every day, and to face tomorrow with a smile. This had always been Father Wang's original intention in writing his books. At this thought, Wang Ling couldn't help pondering what he was looking forward to. Although he might not be able to achieve his small goal of perfectly controlling his primordial qi right now, eating a bag of gluten-flavored crispy noodle snacks was still achievable. After reading Father Wang's story about Brother Gluten, for some reason, Wang Ling suddenly wanted to eat roasted gluten. When Odd Chua had become Wang Ling's apprentice, he had given Wang Ling a gold card to the flagship store. Every month, Wang Ling would ask the Crispy Noodle Snack flagship store how to customize a special flavor of crispy noodle snacks, and this month's quota was reserved for the roasted gluten flavor. Wang Ling sent his request to the VIP email address on the gold card, and very quickly, the customer service girl from the flagship store replied, "Respected Mr. Wang Ling, we have received your request. We will make a box of your customized roasted gluten flavor crispy noodle snacks within the next few days and send it to you as soon as possible." Perfect. Just looking at this message gave Wang Ling a great sense of satisfaction. Things had piled up recently, and it was very easy for people to turn their worries into appetites when they were vexed, so consuming crispy noodle snacks was an alternative way for him to relieve stress. However, this did not mean that the trouble would be resolved just like that. After sending the message, he carefully sorted out his thoughts. There were a few things that needed to be done. The first was President Bai of the Demon Hunters Association, who was on the run. The second was the mysterious informant who had exposed the Demon Hunters Association, President Bai, and the force behind them. Wang Ming had previously tracked down the informant's location, and had sent the message from number 60 High's computer room, but he still couldn't find out who had done it. The third was the angler that Loopy Toad and Immortal Jin Yuan had learned about from Demon Saint on top of the Holy Pillar in the demon world. Of all the people Wang Ling had come into contact with so far, this angler was the most dangerous one because the other party was clearly very proficient in controlling primordial qi. And finally, the fourth matter was the summer camp that Wang Ling was going to attend. Wang Ling actually didn't think that there was anything wrong with this, but after Super Chen's baffling words, he instantly felt that he might be tricked again at this activity. Super Chen's mouth was a classic example of someone who had been blushed, and there were times when you really couldn't not believe it. While he was deep in thought, Wang Ling suddenly felt a pair of hands reach out from nothingness to cover his eyes, and then he heard evil laughter. "Guess who I am?" "Wang Ling." This was Wang Ming's voice. This guy had used a projection to stroll around here again. Wang Ling pulled the fingers off his face and stared at the young man in front of him expressionlessly. Lying on the ground, Loopy Toad lazily opened its eyes. Surprised. When Wang Ling turned his head, he saw Wang Ming staring at him with a mouth full of white teeth. In less than 4 short days, Wang Ming had once again made a breakthrough in his Heavenly E satellite virtual body projection technology. The last time, Wang Ming had actually already been able to remotely materialize the fingers of his virtual body, and when they met again today, Wang Ling realized that Wang Ming had already materialized his entire arm. Looking at Wang Ling's stunned expression, Wang Ming smiled. "I reckon that I'll be able to materialize half of my body by the end of next month." The corners of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. This was too fast, but Wang Ming then said, "Actually, this technology isn't very mature yet. Don't look at how I've materialized both my arms now, they actually won't last for long. As soon as Wang Ming said this, Wang Ling saw his originally materialized arms instantly wilt like withered flowers. It didn't seem to last more than a minute. Wang Ming's expression showed that he had long since predicted this. Look! Wang Ling, even if I can materialize more than half of my body later, it'll actually be a problem for how long? In the satellite projection, Wang Ming sighed. Of course, I didn't come to talk to you about this today. Didn't I ask you to take the collector to Drought Star to collect energy sources? The appraisal results are out. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad raised their eyelids, their expressions strangely identical. The data report is still in the lab, so I'll tell you about it verbally first. Wang Ming cupped his chin and said, the energy source collected in the collector last time can be determined to be primordial qi without a doubt. Although it's less concentrated than the one extracted from your body, after comparison, we found that it basically matches the characteristics of primordial qi. Also, this primordial qi is a little strange, it seems to be mixed with something else, and doesn't seem like the primordial qi of a human cultivator. You can even detect this. Loopy Toad was a little astonished. Of course. Wang Ming said, even between cultivators and spirit beasts, there are subtle differences in spirit energy. To be precise, all the energy sources had a very small difference. That's because they circulate in different ways. But these differences are very subtle, and can only be detected by an instrument, unless it's the perception of an almighty. But it's also very strange, the source of this primordial qi doesn't seem to be human or spirit beast. Chapter 622. If this primordial qi came from the prehistoric vicious beast that the mysterious angler was raising, then it meant that the angler had once released a prehistoric vicious beast on Drought Star. Given the current situation, Immortal Zhen Yuan, who was repairing Drought Star, might be in danger. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad thought of this at the same time, and couldn't help frowning as they cupped their chins and pondered. Wang Ming didn't know what on earth these two guys were thinking, but he thought this scene was a little interesting. It was said that when a dog was raised for a long time, its behavior would be surprisingly similar to its owner's. It was very obvious that Dog 2 and Wang Ling's master-servant rapport was already very high. Even their expressions and movements when they were thinking were exactly the same. Wang Ming sighed heartily. Lingzi, your dog too is looking more and more like you. Wang Ling, Loopy Toad, Wang Ming didn't dare stay for too long. The satellite remote projection technology actually wasn't perfect yet, and this technology actually hadn't been completely open to the public yet. The reason why Wang Ming could use it was because he had the patent card for this technology, which was equivalent to an authority card. Sometimes, with authority, you could indeed do whatever you wanted. But when all was said and done, this wasn't a very compliant operation. With so many people watching him in the lab recently, Wang Ming didn't want to cause trouble for old Qi, so he didn't dare stay for too long each time he used the remote projection technology. That was because Xiaoyin was keeping an eye on him. If he was discovered, he would definitely be reported. He realized that Xiaoyin was actually a person who held a grudge against him until now because he hadn't wanted to eat those pork chops. Wang Ming had initially thought that their relationship had improved a little, but after old Qi had been sent to the hospital and Xiaoyin wasn't allowed to cook in the lab, Xiaoyin's attitude toward him had become colder by the day. He didn't even need to sense his aura. As long as Wang Ming felt a sudden chill, it meant that Xiaoyin was within 10 meters of him and couldn't run away. Although Wang Ming was very reluctant to admit it, he had to admit that Xiaoyin seemed to be controlling him a little. Wang Ming believed that with his brain, he could instantly solve a difficult cultivation equation, but when it came to relationships, he really couldn't figure them out. What he feared the most was people playing a cold war with him. Wang Ming remembered that when he and Wang Ling quarreled as kids, Wang Ling liked to give him the Cold War. Wang Ming remembered that every time, it was Wang Ming who would put down his pride and apologize first. On one hand, he hated the feeling of a Cold War. On the other hand, Wang Ming felt that for better or worse, he was an older brother. After calming down, there was actually no harm in being modest and giving in to his little brother. But the problem was that Jai Yin was now in a Cold War with him, which instantly left him at a loss. What should he do? Apologize. But the problem was that he didn't feel that he had done anything wrong. Before leaving, Dog 2 saw Wang Ming's distressed expression and looked at him. Did you quarrel with that Miss Jai? No. Wang Ming waved his hand. In fact, he didn't know whether this counted as a quarrel or not. Jai Yin was still the same as before. She would be very considerate in protecting his safety, but the pressure was clearly much lower than before. Wang Ming sighed and spread his hands. Since old Qi banned her from cooking, we've been in a Cold War. I don't know why, but I haven't offended her. How long? Less than a week, Loopy Toad thought for a moment. Think carefully, did you offend her in any way? How would I dare offend her? Wang Ming had a very aggrieved expression on his face as he looked at Loopy Toad earnestly. And let me tell you, I even went to comfort her. Hearing this, Wang Ling was startled. This dumbass straight man actually knew how to comfort people. Loopy Toad. How did you comfort her? Wang Ming, I told her to drink more hot water. Loopy Toad, Wang Ling, considering that immortal Jin Yuan might be in danger, Wang Ling and Dog 2 discussed countermeasures that night. Although they couldn't be 100% sure that the primordial qi had come from the primordial vicious beast that the mysterious angler had raised, it was better to nip it in the bud. But there was a saying that prevention was better than cure. Wang Ling felt that he should give immortal Jin Yuan some basic safety guarantees. Wang Ling opened 8 classes of divine weapons again. This was the only original copy in the world, and it had been a gift from Father Wang's strongest fan. Last time, Wang Ling had refined a pile of soul suppression rings, and had even produced a very rare world-defying premium item. Considering the dangerous nature of the primordial vicious beast that the angler had raised, if Wang Ling wanted to forge a magic weapon for immortal Jin Yuan, his first choice would have to be even more ferocious than these dangerous primordial vicious beasts. Thus, Wang Ling's gaze finally settled on a magic weapon that looked very much like a hammer. This magic weapon was very special. It wasn't a long-term magic weapon, and it could only be used a limited number of times. The soul suppression ring that Wang Ling had given grenade throwing before was a long-term magic weapon. Generally speaking, this type of magic weapon had an energy storage function, and could store spirit energy inside. When it was time to use it, it could be released all at once to achieve an explosive effect. Loopy Toad's eyes lit up slightly as it already had an idea. In fact, to put it simply, this type of magic weapon could completely be used as a sure kill technique. What's the origin of this hammer? Loopy Toad couldn't help asking. Wang Ling crooked his finger and turned the page. Then, one man and one dog looked at the information on this hammer magic weapon. Name of magic weapon, 3 views shattering hammer main material, passion iron creator, a smelly and shameless fatty surnamed Luo who doesn't know anything about hammers. Creator's description, life doesn't stop, death doesn't stop. Perhaps this isn't the most perfect magic weapon. But it has my, fatty Luo's, passion, Loopy Toad, Wang Ling, passion iron. What was that? Loopy Toad did a search on its phone and realized that this passion iron wasn't of a low grade, and even surpassed the magnetic stone that grenade-throwing senior immortal had brought back then. Although it wasn't an extinct material, it wasn't easy to get your hands on it. It could probably only be sold on some cultivation black markets. But the problem was, where would little Masterling get the money? Where can we get the passion stone? Loopy Toad was puzzled. Without saying anything else, Wang Ling straightaway used spirit energy to construct golden lines on the ground to draw a smooth magic array. Dog 2's expression froze when it saw this magic array. This is It felt like it had seen this magic array somewhere before. Wang Ling said telepathically, "This is a refinement array." Loopy Toad, Wang Ling, equivalent exchange, alchemy's unchanging principle. Loopy Toad. As soon as he said this, Wang Ling pulled open a drawer and threw the complete set of 3-5 into it. Loopy Toad. Chapter 623. So there was this kind of operation. Dog 2 stared blankly at the scene in front of it. But Little Master Ling was probably the only one who could use this kind of array, because the equivalent exchange refinement array itself was in fact making a deal with the heavenly Tao. But how many people in this world were qualified to negotiate with the heavenly Tao directly like this? Even if someone knew how to draw the refinement array and offered up an offering for the transaction, the heavenly Tao might not respond. But Loopy Toad was a little puzzled. Since the refinement array could be used, why had Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal specially brought the magnetic stones the last time? At that moment, Wang Ling looked at Loopy Toad. It was obvious that he had heard Dog 2's thoughts, and he immediately said telepathically, "Because I didn't finish the last exam paper." Loopy Toad had a look of sudden realization on its face. So that was it, but it understood the reason. But why did he have to use a set of completed 3-5 test papers to make a deal with the heavenly Tao? To tell the truth, Loopy Toad didn't think that this set of 3-5 test papers could be exchanged for the priceless Passion Stone. A Passion Stone was so much more valuable than the 3-5 test papers in cultivation education bookstores, it couldn't be measured at all. Could a set of 3-5 test papers buy a house of 150 square meters in a second-tier city? Of course not, but the Passion Stone could. If there were 5 Passion Stones, you could even buy a 4-square-meter toilet in a first-tier city. That was the difference. But in the end, Loopy Toad still underestimated the value of these 3-5 test papers. Not long after the 3-5 test papers were thrown into the array, Loopy Toad saw them turn into golden particles of light and disappear into nothingness. The heavenly Tao had actually accepted them. A moment later, the refinement array emitted a faint light, and then a 3-inch little person with golden light all over its body appeared in the center of the array. "You are." Loopy Toad was indescribably amazed as it gazed at the little person, as if something had tugged at its heartstrings. It vaguely had an answer in its mind, but it didn't dare believe it and didn't even dare say it out loud. The golden 3-inch man didn't speak, but a voice rang out in Dog 2's mind. "I am the heavens, the Tao, the God, and the world." This voice was devoid of sorrow or joy, but it was so majestic that it made Loopy Toad's green fur stand on end. There was no deliberate intimidation, but there was a kind of power that made people feel fear from the depths of their souls. Wang Ling raised his eyebrows, crouched down, and gently stroked Loopy Toad. Loopy Toad immediately felt the tension in its body disappear and its breathing gradually stabilize. Loopy Toad actually hadn't dared make up its mind before, but after the golden 3-inch man's explanation, it already had a fairly certain answer in its heart. This golden 3-inch man was none other than the embodiment of the 3,000 great spells. It could also be called the embodiment of the will of the heavenly Tao. That heart-palpitating power just now was still fresh in Dog 2's memory. Because it now had the power of Sword Tao in its body, it was very sensitive to heavenly Tao. As it turned out, it wasn't just Dog 2. Loopy Toad also noticed that in Little Master Ling's bedroom, the 2 gremlins' pen and eraser on the table, Pillow Fairy on the bed, and Lord Ma in the toilet, all of them were trembling slightly at the same time. Dog 2 was well aware that all the gremlins who had been enlightened by Little Master Ling had a heavenly Tao in their bodies, so this kind of reaction wasn't strange at all. After soothing Loopy Toad's emotions, Wang Ling patted its butt lightly and had Dog 2 move to one side. Then, he sat down cross-legged and faced the golden 3-inch man. This scene was especially magical, as if it had been a lifetime ago. Wang Ling's expression didn't change in the slightest, and he didn't show any emotion even in front of the golden 3-inch man. Who could withstand this kind of enormous mental pressure when facing the embodiment of heavenly Tao? Dog too marveled in its heart. Little Master Ling was probably the only one who could do this. This scene was in fact very shocking, especially for someone who had mastered one or more heavenly Tao. Given their sensitivity to heavenly Tao, both the pressure and the shock would intensify. Loopy Toad had wanted to take a picture of this scene with its phone to show Little Silver how powerful its master was. But to Loopy Toad's dismay, it realized that its phone actually didn't have any signal and was without internet. This golden 3-inch man embodiment of heavenly Tao probably had the ability to interfere with the internet every time Wang Ling and the golden 3-inch man faced each other. Neither of them spoke, and instead entered a small heavenly Tao domain to converse. This was different from the mind-reading ability, which was an ability to sense the other party's thoughts and could also be used to capture other people's telepathic communication. But it was absolutely safe in this small heavenly Tao domain. Even the mind-reading ability couldn't detect what on earth the person in the heavenly Tao domain was saying. But Face found that his cell phone was not connected to the internet, which was largely due to the influence of the Heavenly Way realm. In fact, this wasn't the golden 3-inch man and Wang Ling's first transaction, and they were very familiar with each other. Dozens of seconds later, the golden 3-inch man opened his hand, and the 3-5 test paper that Wang Ling had offered up as a sacrifice floated in his hand. This handwritten letter filled with heavenly Tao has already reached the standard. He looked at Wang Ling and asked, "What flavor of crispy noodle snacks do you want to trade for?" Wang Ling had drawn the refinement array several times before in order to trade for crispy noodle snacks. It was as if the golden 3-inch man already knew this youngster's temperament. Wang Ling said telepathically, "I want a passion stone." The golden 3-inch man was blank. He felt that the youngster's taste was a little heavy. "You want passion stone-flavored crispy noodle snacks?" Wang Ling. "Just a passion stone." The golden 3-inch man suddenly understood, and at the same time felt a little excited. After so many years, this youngster had finally learned to trade for something else. Actually, when all was said and done, the golden 3-inch man felt that this was all his fault. He recalled when this youngster in front of him was a child. That was about 13 years ago. That day, 3-year-old Wang Ling had drawn the refinement array. When the golden 3-inch man had appeared, he had seen Wang Ling's hand-drawn children's oil painting, and had been utterly shaken. The golden 3-inch man had used a crispy noodle snack packet to trick Wang Ling into giving him the children's oil painting. Just like that, 3-year-old Wang Ling had eaten the first crispy noodle snack packet in his life, and then, after that, Wang Ling would come looking for him to trade every few days. Back then, if he hadn't intentionally led this youngster to that crispy noodle snack flagship store, he would probably still have been harassed. Thinking this, the golden 3-inch man felt a lingering fear in his heart. He had to admit that he was the root of all evil. But fortunately, it seemed that no one else knew. Chapter 624. Wang Ling remembered that he had suddenly dreamed of the equivalent exchange array as a child, just like the heavenly Tao that he had gradually comprehended as he grew up. When he was 3, Wang Ling had awakened very few heavenly Tao, but he had never felt the slightest bit afraid when facing the golden 3-inch man. If the golden 3-inch man was the embodiment of the will of heavenly Tao, then what on earth was he? This was a question that Wang Ling had been pondering all these years. There had to be a reason why he was able to sit here and face the embodiment of the will of heavenly Tao without the slightest fluctuation in his state of mind. As for monsters like Buttface and Ha who had been enlightened by him, it was normal for them to feel touched or even afraid. This was an existence formed from the will of the 3,000 Great Tao. Even if it didn't reveal its aura, just by sitting there, it was already able to display a great majesty. Although it was only 3 inches long, it contained a vast amount of energy. The golden 3-inch man was very pleased because he finally felt that after 13 years, the youngster in front of him had finally used himself on the right path. The sentiment stone was a very precious type of stone, and was classified as a second-level resource item. But it hadn't reached the point where it was extinct. Thus, Wang Ling's 3-5 test paper was absolutely qualified to be used in exchange. All resource items could be divided into 10 grades. Wang Ling's handwritten book could be exchanged for a first-level resource. If it was an extinct resource, the price would have to be increased. So in summary, the golden 3-inch man had approved of this transaction. Very quickly, the golden 3-inch man stretched out his hand, and specks of light blossomed on his small palm like a gorgeous flower. A grayish-blue hexagonal spirit stone appeared in his palm. This was the sentiment stone that Wang Ling needed. Based on the 3-5 test paper's valuation, the golden 3-inch man had produced 6 stones in one go and given them all to Wang Ling. Dog 2 had been secretly observing from behind, and felt that this equivalent exchange array was too convenient. Furthermore, he had actually managed to get 6 stones. 6 stones. This was also a little unexpected for Wang Ling. This wasn't the first time he had done the 3-5 test paper. He had actually been doing it since junior high school. There were a lot of questions that were beyond the syllabus, which he had come up with on his own so that it would be easier to make a deal with the heavenly Tao. Based on a conservative estimate, Wang Ling estimated that he would be able to exchange for 3 of them, which was just enough to make the 3 views-shattering hammer. Now that he had 6 of them, the extra 3 could be used to make something else. It was going to be Wang Ming's birthday soon, and Wang Ling felt that he could use these 3 emotion stones to make permanent armor for Wang Ming. This time, the handwritten book you sacrificed is the elite enhanced version. That's why he got 5, the golden 3-inch man said. It turned out that increasing the difficulty could increase the value. Realization dawned on Wang Ling. It was only today that he knew about this. As for why you got 6, the 6th one is an extra reward. The golden 3-inch man said calmly, after all, this is one of the more normal deals you've made with me all these years. Wang Ling, the golden 3-inch man suddenly said, speaking of which, you should know that this equivalent exchange refining formation can be used to exchange for more than just resources, right? Wang Ling. He really hadn't known. The golden 3-inch man, apart from the resources you want, you can actually also exchange for all kinds of information. I've already seen the calamity in your life. This is the great heavenly tribulation. Even if you foresee it, the probability of you being able to resolve it is very low. But I can tell you how to resolve it. And the price? Wang Ling asked telepathically. At your current stage, the most important thing in your life, the golden 3-inch man said slowly. But even so, the golden 3-inch man didn't think that the young man would choose to make this exchange. The most important thing in life might be different for many people, but they couldn't do without family and friends, and no one would trade the lives of living people. But the law of equivalent exchange had always been cold and unforgiving, and there was no room for negotiation. Wang Ling, then I'll look for you in a few days. The golden 3-inch man. Wang Ling, the roasted gluten-flavored crispy noodle snacks will arrive in a few days. The golden 3-inch man. In the end, the golden 3-inch man was scared off by Wang Ling. Even the refinement array on the ground disappeared without a trace. Wang Ling guessed that this girl probably still hadn't recovered from the trauma of the crispy noodle snacks. But at his current stage, the most important thing in his life. Wang Ling felt that it had to be that box of custom-made roasted gluten-flavored crispy noodle snacks. He had wasted a very limited opportunity to use his membership privileges to custom-make it. Not only was it a flavor that couldn't be bought outside, he hadn't even had a bite yet. What was the saying? The rarer something is, the greater its value. Wang Ling felt that this golden 3-inch man didn't know what was good for him at all, but the great heavenly tribulation that the golden 3-inch man had mentioned just now couldn't help but arouse Wang Ling's attention. The great heavenly tribulation that was coming soon. Wang Ling's gaze trembled. Could it be referring to the final exams? He really couldn't think of a tribulation that could be more lethal than the final exams. For Wang Ling, he was already used to it. Because he felt like he had been going through a tribulation every day since he was in high school, following the disappearance of the golden 3-inch man, Loopy Toad felt as if a string that had been taut in its mind had been swept away. It didn't know what the heavenly Tao had said to little Master Ling, but for some reason, it felt like Wang Ling's eyes were a little solemn. Wang Ling didn't think too much about it. After all, the great heavenly tribulation hadn't happened yet, and he hadn't sensed any omens. It was fine as long as he kept an eye on it. There was no point in thinking too much about it. Right now, it was more important to make this 3-view shattering hammer. Wang Ling snapped his fingers, and the microwave oven on the first floor instantly teleported into the room. Just like the last time, the first step was to use the enchanted microwave oven to smelt the materials. Wang Ling threw in the 3 emotion stones. The moment they completely melted into liquid, Wang Ling turned on the microwave oven, and the liquid inside floated in the air under the effect of the traction spell before swirling into a liquid ball. Then, the great weapon refining spell was instantly activated. With a burst of bright light, a small black and gold hammer swiftly appeared in front of Wang Ling's eyes. The shape of this hammer was very strange. It was actually a flat design. The hammer head was very big, but the middle was completely flat. There seemed to be a mechanism at the end of the hammer head. Loopy Toad saw Wang Ling fiddle with it, and the flat middle part of the hammer head actually instantly popped open. Chapter 625. Although the design of this 3-view shattering hammer seemed a little strange and avant-garde, the fact that it had appeared in 8 classes of divine weapons and was included in it proved just how unusual this little hammer was. Furthermore, limited-use magic weapons often had an even more exaggerated and terrifying instantaneous burst of power than permanent magic weapons. Wang Ling carefully examined the result of the forging. The quality of the forging this time was pretty outstanding. This 3-view shattering hammer was a first-class holy weapon. However, Wang Ling estimated that after some slight modifications, it would be able to unleash world-defying power. The clamshell in the middle of the hammer wasn't an unnecessary design, but a groove for an energy source. This was also an important reason why Wang Ling had specially chosen this hammer as Immortal Jinyuan's defensive magic weapon. Because he could inject his primordial qi into the hammer. If the primordial qi that Wang Ming had detected on Drought Star really had been left behind by a prehistoric vicious beast that the mysterious angler had reared, then he would definitely be at a huge disadvantage in a fight using spirit qi. They were both energy sources, and spirit qi was nothing in the face of primordial qi. Although Immortal Jinyuan's body could produce some primordial qi, his main energy source was still spirit qi. Wang Ling had already confirmed this when he had fought Wind Spirit on Drought Star the last time. As for those unknown prehistoric vicious beasts, the way they drove their energy could freely change depending on their environment. They completely used primordial qi as their main energy source, and Immortal Jinyuan definitely wouldn't be their match in a real fight. The most important thing was that Wang Ling didn't know what on earth that mysterious angler wanted to do, but it was better to be prepared. This 3-view shattering hammer would be a great help to Immortal Jinyuan. Wang Ling raised his eyebrows and injected primordial qi into the hammer, filling it to the brim. When the energy source was full, Loopy Toad saw that the middle of the hammer's head actually bulged out like a balloon. This hammer can be used 5 times at most. Wang Ling gave the hammer to Loopy Toad and said telepathically, "Take this hammer to Drought Star with Little Silver." Dog 2 was blank and tilted its head. "Why are you asking him?" "I want him to find the angler," Wang Ling said telepathically. But Face was confused by her words, and he didn't understand what she meant. But Wang Ling was as clear as a mirror in his heart, because in theory, holy beasts and prehistoric vicious beasts were on the same level. The reason why prehistoric vicious beasts were called prehistoric vicious beasts was because they had very low spiritual intelligence, but were superior in terms of lethality. Holy beasts, on the other hand, were the complete opposite. Holy beasts' cultivation speed was very slow, but their spiritual intelligence was already activated the moment they were born. The attributes of the primordial vicious beasts and the sacred beasts were more like the 8 trigrams, each with its own merits. The reason why he had asked Little Silver to track the prehistoric vicious beast was partly out of consideration of balance. Prehistoric vicious beasts were extremely sensitive to holy beast blood. If Little Silver was present, he would be a deterrent. On the other hand, Little Silver could also take this opportunity to smear the holy beast's blood on it and reverse track it. Holy beast blood was extraordinary, and Little Silver could use it to track someone. Wang Ling had already noticed this as early as the last time Little Silver had come to offer his holy beast blood for Loopy Toad's medicinal bath. Buttface looked at the small hammer. "Do you have an instruction manual?" "Yes." Wang Ling flipped open the 8 classes of divine weapons again. The instruction manuals for all the magic weapons were in the latter half of the book, like a dictionary that had been sorted into alphabetical groups at the back of the book. He had initially chosen this magic artifact because it could store energy, but even he himself didn't know what the hammer's specific function was. Master and servant flipped to the page of the instruction manual and began to look at the small hammer's specific function. The instruction manual read, 8 classes of divine weapons, Refiner's instruction manual for the 3-view shattering hammer, developer. Explanation 1. Original design intent. This product was designed in an era when there are more and more permanent magic weapons. In an era when limited magic weapons aren't receiving much attention, our Refiner design team, led by Qingwei Luo, designed the 3-view shattering hammer, a powerful limited magic weapon. Its powerful energy storage spirit energy enables it to retain the powerful potential that a permanent magic weapon wouldn't be able to display in a fight against a strong enemy. This product's greatest advantage is its extremely explosive power and abundant number of uses. When the energy of this product is fully charged, it can be used up to 10 times, far exceeding the number of uses of conventional limited magic weapons. Description 2. Product effect. This magic design was inspired by the famous master of modesty, Emperor Rang Yen Juanzi. 1. Passive effect, forced fairness. When this product is used for the first time, the hammer wielder will automatically trigger the forced fairness effect. The more powerful the energy source, the stronger the suppression. The opponent will fall into a state of fair duel, so that they won't be able to display their original strength, making it easier for them to win in battle. The power of all the enemy's attacks will be weakened by several times, and the enemy will enter a weakened state. The hammer wielder will appear to be even more explosive. 2. Active effect, the Rang. All living beings are equal. This skill will be used once. To use the corresponding skill, the user must silently recite the corresponding incantation. When the Rang, all living beings are equal, effect is triggered, the hammer wielder will forcibly expand the area of fair duel, and all the enemies in the vicinity will be forced into a state of weakness, making them equal or even weaker than the user. At the same time, the light of all living beings are equal will strongly intimidate the opponent's 3 views, causing them to lose the desire to attack. 3. Active effect, the Rang. All living beings are final. This skill will be used once. When the Rang, all living beings are final, effect is triggered, the hammer wielder will hit the ground, subverting the 3 views, and enter a forced golden body state. Under the golden body state, all things will return to silence, and the hammer wielder will not be able to receive any physical or magical attacks, entering a state of complete immunity for 10 seconds. This effect can be removed by chanting silently. When the Rang, all living beings are final, effect is triggered, the golden light emitted by the hammer wielder can dispel the confusion and impulsiveness of his teammates, forcing them to calm down, and thus enter a Buddha nature state to return to peak combat power. Chapter 626. Master and servant stared at this explanation in silence for a long time. It had to be said that as a limited-use magic weapon, this 3-view shattering hammer indeed had a lot of functions. Furthermore, Wang Ling couldn't help thinking of a heavenly Tao called fairness. The Great Fairness spell he had mastered was a spell that could shorten the gap in strength between an enemy and himself. Its effect was like an enhanced version of this hammer's, all living beings are equal. But Wang Ling basically didn't have the chance to use this spell. Because for Wang Ling, this spell was actually a relatively useless heavenly Dao spell. After all, looking at his current situation, most of the enemies he faced were weaker than him. Once he used this all living beings are equal spell, he would instead weaken himself and strengthen his enemies. This spell was meant to be used in the face of a strong enemy, so Wang Ling didn't have the chance to use it at all. Suddenly, he realized that this hammer was actually pretty useful. Even if it was just a limited-use magic weapon, it was still a powerful protective magic treasure. Furthermore, after the primordial chi was poured into it, it was paired with such a marvelous magic treasure, causing its original power to be greatly increased. Loopy Toad used the swallowing spell to put the hammer away, and planned to find time to contact Little Silver that night. After all, this was a personal order from Little Master Ling, so it had to obey. The only troublesome thing was that Loopy Toad needed to explain to Little Silver about Immortal Jin Yuan and Drought Star, which Little Silver didn't know about. In order to find that angler's whereabouts as soon as possible, Little Silver would undoubtedly use the holy beast blood to reverse track him. However, it was still a question mark whether it would be so easy to carry out the plan. That night, Little Silver was waiting for the express delivery at the villa. His plan to buy a collar had been delayed because of the Didi Shun Feng spirit car incident, so in the end, he still chose to buy it online. At around 8:00, the villa's doorbell rang. Little Silver opened the door and saw a disheveled courier brother standing respectfully in front of him with a package in his hands. "Hello, Mr. Little Silver, Shun Feng God Express is at your service." Oh my God, Little Silver was stupefied by the courier little brother's wretched appearance. Looking to the side, he saw a Woyang shovel at the courier's feet and a man-sized hole behind him. Little Silver. Were the Shun Feng God Express's couriers all so unconventional? Little Silver remembered reading a lot of news about couriers online, and almost all of them revolved around Shun Feng God Express couriers. These couriers always inexplicably appeared in all sorts of places, and then casually became heroes. A while ago, a network security company had been invaded by a virus, and the entire company had been helpless. A courier from Shun Feng God Express waited at the door for a long time. In the end, he personally went forward to repair the network loophole, preventing the personal security of hundreds of millions of users from being leaked. Being a courier was really a miraculous profession. Or could it be that only the courier of Shun Feng God Express was more mystical? Why didn't you go through the front door? Little Silver took the package curiously. He looked at the work ID hanging on the courier little brother's chest. The little brother's name was Liang Liang. The courier little brother smiled in distress and scratched his head. Because there was an owner in this villa estate who wanted to celebrate his girlfriend's birthday before, and he asked us to come out of the ground with a birthday cake to give her a surprise. In the end, because I wasn't very familiar with the job, I was poached to the villa security team's office. Little Silver, Liang Liang scratched his head. Then, I was blacklisted by the security guards in this area. Little Silver, then it's really been hard on you. It's fine, the customer comes first. It's my responsibility to deliver every package to the door before the courier from the new area gets here. This courier little brother called Liang Liang was very moved. Mr. Little Silver, please rest assured, I'll help you fill in the hole behind me when I leave. It'll be 100% restored, and no one will be able to tell that I've been here. Little Silver, speaking up to this point, the courier little brother suddenly said, "Oh, that's right, Mr. Little Silver, can I give you a 5-star review? We have a small gift to give away." Then, the courier little brother took out a grading device from his pocket. There were 5 buttons on it, corresponding to 5 grading options. Little Silver felt that he was actually very easy to talk to. Even if this courier little brother had been blacklisted by the security guards, he still did his best to deliver packages, so of course Little Silver wouldn't make things difficult for him. Thus, Little Silver pressed the 5-star rating button almost without thinking. "By the way, what's your small gift?" Little Silver asked after the grading was done. The small gift is based on a customer's purchase, and the system automatically calculates how relevant it is. Of course, all of this is done in the privacy of each customer. Us couriers actually don't know what the customer has bought, and are only responsible for delivering the goods. Liang smiled. "Your service is too humane," Little Silver exclaimed, and then raised his pen to sign his name on the box in a flamboyant flourish. Because he had just started learning human culture, Little Silver's handwriting actually wasn't very good, but these 2 words, Little Silver, were already the best he had written. After confirming receipt, Liang also took out the gift with the full score. It was a single-use storage spirit bag. Once the contents were taken out, the spirit bag would turn into flying ash and disappear. It was low-carbon, environmentally friendly, and had 0 pollution. Little Silver walked in happily with the collar he had bought. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was eating his broccoli salad when he saw Little Silver walk in with the spirit bag in his hand and a doting smile on his face. Actually, he really felt that Little Silver was a very easy person to satisfy. "What's the gift?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help asking. "I don't know, I haven't seen it yet." "It's a gift that the computer system calculates based on the item's relevance," Little Silver replied. He put the express delivery box on the table, then injected spirit energy into the small silk bag in his hand. With a few flashes of spirit light, a plastic package flew out of the silk bag, and the unsealed silk bag instantly turned into flying ash. Then, a slender leather whip, a box of 6 assembled candles, and a bottle of lubricant appeared in front of Little Silver. The scariest thing was that Little Silver actually found a pink string in the plastic bag, which was actually a pair of sexy underwear. Little Silver picked up the string and turned his head to look at Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. "What's this?" Chapter 627. Little Silver was pure silver, a silver that was free from vulgar tastes. The moment he saw this rope-like lingerie, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't know how to explain it for a moment, or rather, he was thinking about how to explain it in a way that wouldn't seem so vulgar. Little Silver hadn't been out in the world for long, and actually didn't know a lot about the ways of the world. Since Brother Ling had placed Little Silver with Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, it had to be because he trusted Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal 100%. Given Brother Ling's level of expert, he couldn't possibly have left Little Silver with Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal because he was short of money, right? Although there were a lot of old drivers in the chat group who would make jokes from time to time, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had immediately made an announcement in the group banning any uncivilized chatting after Little Silver had joined. In the end, it was because he didn't want Little Silver to be led astray by Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. "Since Brother Ling trusts me so much, I have to take good care of Little Silver." Thinking this, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded solemnly. But Little Silver wasn't the kind of player who could be easily fooled. Because he wasn't clear on a lot of things, he tended to be very stubborn when it came to understanding things, and had to find an answer that he agreed with. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal knew that if he couldn't come up with a reasonable explanation now, Little Silver would find out through other channels. "Grenade-throwing, what on earth is this? Why do you look so strange?" Little Silver asked suspiciously when he realized that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was staring at the pink rope with his chin in his hands, lost in deep thought. "Oh, it's nothing, I was just wondering if you liked this color." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was quick-witted and didn't arouse Little Silver's suspicions. "Pink, it's okay. Some people online say that pink is very girly, but I like it very much." "Everyone is free to like whatever color they like," Little Silver answered quickly. In fact, Little Silver wasn't prejudiced against pink in terms of color. As for the online theory that Pink was a sissy, he actually didn't quite understand it. Little Silver's attitude toward Pink was neutral. He could use it at home, but he would never take it out. Hearing Little Silver's words, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal instantly breathed a sigh of relief. He looked at Little Silver with a smile and pointed to the pink lingerie. Actually, this is a headband. Hairband. That's right, headband. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said, when you wash your face, you can tie it around your forehead to prevent your hair from getting wet. Of course, it can also absorb sweat during exercise. Is that really the case? Little Silver stared at this pink headband and frowned, because somehow he felt that Grenade-throwing's expression was a little different and a little strange. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal tried his best to look as natural as possible. That's right, it's a headband. Fine. In any case, I can only use this thing at home, I can't take it out. Little Silver pursed his lips. Soon after, he looked at the lubricant, candle, and leather whip gloomily. He really didn't understand why the hairband was sent with these three things. After receiving the package, Little Silver went to wash his face and put on a facial mask. This was a habit that Little Silver had developed recently. Everyone needed to take care of themselves, and Little Silver was naturally no exception. He had actually learned how to put on a facial mask from Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, and even the facial mask he used was Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's. But a cultivator's cleansing facial mask was different from an ordinary one. This was a genuine cosmetic mask that had liposuction, water gloss, and a remodeling effect. After it was put on, the whole face would be as white as an egg, and the worse the skin, the better the effect. After one was put on, the effect would last for a month. In fact, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't think there was any need for Little Silver to put it on, because this guy's face was already very white. When Little Silver had visited the Wong family's small villa back then, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal knew that Little Silver had been given the nickname Fair-Faced Girl by Mother Wong. As a holy beast, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt that Little Silver was actually quite particular about his appearance, because of the facial mask. That pink-red headband from before just happened to come in handy. When Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal saw this scene, his entire expression was a little off. Then he saw Little Silver lean back on the sofa and turn on his phone, as if he was making a video call with someone. The corners of his mouth twitched. Brother Silver, what are you doing, Little Silver? I'm going to make a call with Dog 2. It's looking for me, and says that Master has an important combat mission for me. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, isn't it inappropriate for you to look for it with a facial mask on? Little Silver, it's nothing, we're family. This Dog 2 can't take human form yet. If I put a facial mask on in front of it, it'll be so envious. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, it always shows off in front of me. This time, I've finally caught a chance. Little Silver patted the facial mask and did his best to make it as even and flat as possible without leaving any air bubbles. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal now really hoped that Brother Dog didn't know too much. The ringing lasted for about a minute before Loopy Toad accepted the video chat mode that Little Silver had sent. Very quickly, the video was sent over. With one glance, Loopy Toad saw that Little Silver was putting on a facial mask, and judging from his smug expression, this guy was obviously doing it on purpose. The corners of Loopy Toad's mouth twitched, and its keen eyes then caught sight of the pink headband on Little Silver's forehead. Loopy Toad was startled on the spot. Little Silver, that headband on your forehead is quite unique. Little Silver, of course, it's a freebie I got when I bought a magic artifact. The color is average, but it's really silky smooth, and for some reason, when I tied it on my head, I really wanted to be touched. Now, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal really wanted to find a hole to crawl into. Loopy Toad. Didn't Grenade-throwing tell you what it is? Little Silver, Grenade-throwing said it's a headband. Loopy Toad, a headband. Loopy Toad clearly knew that Little Silver had most likely been deceived, but it couldn't bear to expose the lie. On the contrary, it could quite understand Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's good intentions. Thus, even if it knew what on earth this pink headband was, Loopy Toad still did its best to smile in front of the video chat. "Your headband looks pretty good, Little Silver, at least you know what's good. Are you jealous? Do you want me to order another one that's the same as a dime for you?" Oh. The corners of Loopy Toad's mouth twitched. Better not, it didn't have the habit of putting underwear on its head. "Loopy Toad, but I'll have to trouble you to tell Grenade-throwing, Little Silver, what do you want to say?" "My speaker is on, he's right next to me." "Loopy Toad, I want to ask him, he went through 9 years of compulsory education, why is he so outstanding?" Chapter 628. It was very obvious that Little Silver had been duped. As for why Dog 2 knew about this kind of thing, it was a long story, because the phone Loopy Toad was using now was Father Wong's leftover one, and when it had been given to Loopy Toad, its online shopping account hadn't been completely logged in yet. Loopy Toad remembered that it had inadvertently opened it and happened to see something like that in the historical record at that time. This was actually a lot of information. At the time, Loopy Toad had stared at the screen in shock for a long time, then pretended not to see it and logged out of the account. Loopy Toad felt that it knew more about the ways of the world than Little Silver. If it had treated this as a joke back then, it would definitely have been kicked out of the family by Father Wong. After all, it hadn't been long since it had arrived at the Wong family's small villa, thus, there were many times when it was appropriate to turn a blind eye and pretend that it hadn't seen anything was the right thing to do. As it turned out, Loopy Toad's decision at the time had been quite accurate. After all, not everyone's legs were as thick as Little Master Ling's. Dog 2 thought for a while, and in the end decided not to tell Little Silver about this hairband. There were times when a white lie was necessary. So after careful consideration, Loopy Toad said to Little Silver, "Your hairband looks really good." It was a lie, but the truth was that Little Silver was rarely envied. As Wong Ling's contract beast, Little Silver would naturally compare himself to Loopy Toad. So every time he heard Loopy Toad mention Wong Ling taking it out for a walk, Little Silver would be extremely envious. Now that there was finally something that Dog 2 was envious of, Little Silver was very happy. In front of the video call, Little Silver had a smug expression on his face. "If you want it, just tell me. Don't be polite, I'll buy you a box later and send it over." Loopy Toad, buy a box. Loopy Toad was blank. Buy a box for what? To change into something else. Loopy Toad clearly didn't want to continue on this topic, so it hurriedly changed the subject and spoke telepathically to Little Silver instead. Soundless voice transmission wasn't a complicated spell. After many improvements, the current soundless voice transmission spell could be perfectly integrated with modern technology. For example, the spell that Buttface was using now was the face-to-face soundless voice transmission spell. This was a type of soundless voice transmission spell that was specially designed for video calls. Sound transmission spells were always the same. Many branches were designed according to the basic sound transmission spell formula, so as long as one knew the basic sound transmission spell, it was not difficult to learn other types of sound transmission spells. However, the structure of the Heaven's Path sound transmission technique was completely different from the basic sound transmission technique. Loopy Toad remembered that Little Master Ling had once mentioned the Heavenly Dao's great telepathy spell. As long as Wong Ling wanted to, his voice could reach the hearts of everyone on Earth at the same time. This kind of method was too heaven-defying, and it was far from the level that they could reach. So every time Dog 2 used the telepathic technique, it would wonder when it could be as outstanding as Little Master Ling. So many cultivators had lumbar discs, but its Little Master was the only one who stood out so much that it made one's scalp go numb. Face-to-face voice transmission. Seeing this scene, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal tactfully turned around and went about his own business. If he chose to use the face-to-face voice transmission technique, that would mean that these two contract beasts were going to whisper to each other, and it would be inconvenient for him to listen in. Since that was the case, he naturally wouldn't ask for a snub. Furthermore, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't think that this was bad. Although Little Silver and Dog 2 bickered from time to time, this was another manifestation of their close relationship. Now that the two of them had learned to whisper to each other, this scene gave off a warm, brotherly vibe. In the end, it's brotherling, he's so considerate. Looking at this scene now, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help sighing with emotion in his heart. No wonder so many people had responded to the two-child plan now. Having one more contract beast made a difference. With two contract beasts as companions, you definitely wouldn't feel lonely. On the other side, Little Silver felt a little strange about Loopy Toad's telepathic technique. When did I use the face-to-face voice transmission technique? Can't grenade-throwing know about this? Loopy Toad replied, it's dangerous for Senior Immortal to know about this. Our little master thought about it before concealing it. Although grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had the soul suppression ring, which could resurrect people on the spot, it wasn't invincible, and had its own limitations. After grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had died at Evil Sword God's hands, he had carefully read the soul suppression ring's description when he got back. Unlimited resurrection was one of its abilities. As long as the ring was intact, the body could be reconstructed. However, there was a label inside that he hadn't noticed before, and that was the word energy source. It was very clear in the Soul Suppression Ring's manual that the Soul Suppression Ring could only resurrect targets who had been fatally injured by a spirit energy spell. That was to say, if the enemy you faced used primordial chi as an energy source, the Soul Suppression Ring would be useless. Hence, Wong Ling had never intended to involve grenade throwing in this matter from the very beginning. The Three Views Shattering Hammer was actually a long story, because it had to start with the Kun corpse that Demon Saint and Sage Master Shenhuiyue had defeated in the Holy Palace of the Demon World. Little Silver was stupefied when he heard this. He had no idea that Loopy Toad had such an adventure. So, you're now being mistaken for a big shot. Little Silver was startled, but that didn't seem to be the main point right now. What had he heard? A prehistoric vicious beast, and a baby Kun at that. Little Silver couldn't help clicking his tongue, and he said in a tone as if he had foreseen this, there's actually a prehistoric vicious beast alive. Did you sense it? Loopy Toad suddenly asked. Yes, but I didn't dare confirm it before. There's actually a slight telepathic connection between holy beasts and vicious beasts, Little Silver replied. Little Silver replied, when I was hiding in Immortal Mansion before, I vaguely sensed something, but I thought it was an illusion at the time. So it's possible that the angler you mentioned released a vicious beast on Earth. Dog 2's fur trembled at these words. It suddenly understood a little why Little Master was so eager to forge this spirit hammer. It was very likely that after Little Master Ling had noticed the angler through this incident, he had already sensed that the angler had extended his hand to Earth. Although it wasn't clear what the other party's objective was, what was certain was that Immortal Zhenyuan's life was indeed in danger. How about it, do you want to come with me? I'll help that senior deliver the hammer that Little Master made for him, Loopy Toad said as it looked at Little Silver after it calmed down. Of course. This is Master's first mission, I definitely have to do a good job. Little Silver tore off the mask on his face and stood up excitedly. Actually, he was a little selfish. Chapter 629. In fact, all these years, Little Silver had always fantasized that holy beasts hadn't truly gone extinct. Apart from himself, it would be good if there was still one living holy beast. But all these years, human cultivators hadn't been able to find the whereabouts of the holy beasts even though they had used all kinds of advanced scientific magic treasures to explore the area. Little Silver had thought that his dream had been shattered, but now that he heard about anglers and prehistoric vicious beasts, he suddenly saw a glimmer of hope. There had been news before about a plane whose signal had suddenly disappeared in the middle of a flight, and it had directly vanished from the face of the earth for 10 years. In the end, 100 years later, this group of people, who had been regarded as dead at the time, appeared on a mysterious island and established Stone Village, so maybe a miracle really could happen. Grenade throwing, grenade throwing. I'm going out. I'm going to Master's place. After confirming with Loopy Toad that they were on the move, Little Silver planned to set off right away. He also reported it to Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal. Little Silver originally wasn't in the habit of doing this. Sometimes, he really had to believe in metaphysics. Judging from his 3 previous visits to the police station, as long as he went out alone, he would definitely end up in the police station. So now, Little Silver didn't dare act recklessly. It was safer to find someone to go with him. On the other side, Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal let go of the mouse in his hand and looked at him. Okay, Brother Silver, I'll drive you there. In fact, it was Grenade Throwing himself who had asked for someone to accompany Little Silver when he went out. Although Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal had acquaintances at the police station, he still had to go through the basic bail procedures. Who could stand being arrested the first time he went out? Thus, it was better to avoid trouble. Although it would take some time to drive Little Silver to Brotherling's place, it was still a lot better than wasting time at the police station later. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal put down his work and prepared to drive the car. Only then did Little Silver remember that this was his first time sitting in Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal's car. Grenade Throwing. What car are you driving? Little Silver couldn't help asking. A Huawei triplex spirit car, water, land, and air. It's super fast. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal grinned. I remember there's a brand called Lenovo. No need. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal quickly waved his hand. This is a traitor. Little Silver raised his eyebrows. Although Grenade Throwing Painting played it down, Little Silver could feel that he was full of righteousness and a sense of justice. Suddenly, Little Silver seemed to understand a little why Master wanted him to stay at Grenade Throwing's house. Was this a hint that she should learn more from Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal? Little Silver felt that this was the only explanation that made no sense. What kind of person was Master? He wouldn't throw himself here just to save money. Yes, that must be it. Just as Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal was about to go to the garage to get the car, Little Silver suddenly shouted, Grenade Throwing. Grenade Throwing. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal, is there anything else, Brother Silver? Little Silver, can I stay here forever? Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal smiled slightly. Of course, Brother Silver can treat this place as your own home. Little Silver, Grenade Throwing. Grenade Throwing. When I come back from the mission, can I not order takeout and eat broccoli? Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal was startled. Brother Silver, you're willing to eat broccoli. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal's impression was that Little Silver had always been extremely averse to vegetables. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal was unexpectedly caught off guard by this sudden change in attitude. Brother Silver, I just suddenly wanted to eat it, can't I? Why not? If Brother Silver wants to eat broccoli, you can have as much as you want. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal was a little excited, as if he had found a kindred spirit. All right. Then it's a deal. When I'm done with the mission, I'll come back to eat it. Little Silver was overjoyed. Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal. Although Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal was very happy, why did he feel that Little Silver had raised a very strange flag? It was like those TV dramas where a general going to war would say to his fiancée, when the war is over, I'll come and marry you. Then, the two of them went to the garage next to the villa. Little Silver saw Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal stand at the garage door for a few seconds before the tightly shut door opened automatically. This garage was powered by a facial recognition system. Then, an exquisite tricycle SUV appeared in front of Little Silver. This SUV was dark gold and covered in thick armor. It looked very cumbersome, but was in fact very light, much lighter than most supercars on the market. This was Little Silver's first time seeing grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's car, and it felt like a breath of fresh air. A spirit car was very different from a regular car in that it was identified by a spirit sword instead of a car key. All spirit cars bought by cultivators would be bound to the cultivator's sword in the exclusive shop. "How do I start it?" Little Silver asked. He had never seen these things before, and lacked knowledge about the spirit cars used by modern cultivators. "It's very simple. First, you have to take out the bound spirit sword." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal summoned his brilliant victory sword, then opened the lid on the back of the car, which looked like a fuel tank, and stuck the sword in together with its scabbard. With a roar of the engine, the car started smoothly. "Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Brother Silver, don't just stand there, get in." Little Silver, on a sword, it would take 2 hours to travel from Wenxian Garden to the Wang family's small villa. It would take 2 hours in total, but it would actually be faster to travel by car. That was because there was an aerial bridge in the sky specially designed for vehicles to travel on, and a sword user couldn't travel on it, they had to drive. But for the sake of convenience, cultivators nowadays usually left their cars at home to collect dust unless they were going to some important occasion. It was still a little more convenient to travel with just one sword. It took no more than 3 minutes for the car to slowly rise into the air and drive steadily in the direction of the Wang family's small villa on the bridge. Little Silver looked around curiously. This was the first time he had seen such a modern aerial bridge. But after 5 or 6 minutes of driving, Little Silver suddenly frowned. He turned his gaze to a layer of clouds. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sensed Little Silver's abnormality. "Brother Silver, what's wrong? There seems to be killing intent." Little Silver grit his teeth as he stared at the layers of clouds. Little Silver was almost naturally sensitive to this kind of malicious aura. There was absolutely no mistaking it. This was a malicious, murderous aura. Moreover, this smell was somewhat familiar. "Who is it?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal gripped the steering wheel tightly as he became more vigilant. At that moment, Little Silver's eyes darkened. Although he couldn't be 100% sure, this aura was very similar to the killing intent on that Mr. Liu from before. Chapter 630. A murderous aura seeped through the clouds to the side. After Little Silver's alert, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal also sensed the faint murderous aura in the clouds. Although the other party had hidden very well, Little Silver still sensed it. A holy beast's perception was extraordinary and much sharper than that of a cultivator's. Furthermore, Little Silver was very certain that the other party was from the Demon Hunters Association. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned. It seems that President Bai has more than one trusted aide. Mr. Liu isn't the most recent one. Were we fooled by Mr. Liu? Little Silver was puzzled. Probably not. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal shook his head. That Mr. Liu is probably in the dark himself. This President Bai is very cunning. Mr. Liu was President Bai's secretary, yes, but who said that there could only be one secretary? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help but recall a piece of social and emotional news from a while ago. A boy had used the same chat app to date more than 600 girls at the same time, and had even categorized them according to their height and 3 measurements to deceive their feelings. If an ordinary boy could do this, what more the cunning president of the Demon Hunters Association? After Mr. Liu had been closely guarded as a witness, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had actually been on guard against President Bai's revenge, but he never expected the other party to be so bold as to choose to follow them after they left the house. This was the Sky Bridge, which had strict high-altitude control measures and all kinds of surveillance. It definitely wasn't wise to make a move here and be seen. If the other party insisted on making a move here, there was only one possibility: the other party had a magic artifact that could instantly cut off space. This reminded Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal of the Wuji umbrella, which Mr. Liu had mentioned before. This was a quasi-world-defying magic artifact made up of 49 different holy beast skins, and was still missing one skin to complete the incomplete product. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal gripped the steering wheel tightly and pushed his spirit perception to the maximum as he pressed a red button on the side of the steering wheel. Little Silver, what's this? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Brother Silver, you don't know, but this is an absolute field that I specially added for this car. As long as you press this button, it'll create a powerful spirit magnetic protective wall, also known as the field. Oh! Little Silver was enlightened. Although he didn't quite understand, he felt that it was very awesome. Not long after Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal pressed the button, Little Silver saw an azure-blue spherical spirit magnetic shield around the car, which firmly protected the entire Triphibian off-road vehicle like an egg. The purpose of the spirit magnetic shield was to prevent the enemy from using flying swords to penetrate from a distance. Although the body of the vehicle had a certain amount of armor, when the spirit magnetic shield was activated, it was equivalent to double protection. Sure enough, as Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had expected, not long after his spirit magnetic shield was activated, the other party's probing flying sword had already attacked him. Through the feedback from the heat sensor in the car, they could clearly see that there was a strange fluctuation in the spirit energy magnetic field protective wall behind the car just now. This was the feedback of the protective wall being attacked. An invisible flying sword. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal tried his best to remain calm. Although the incident happened suddenly, everything was still within his expectations so far. Under normal circumstances, the invisible flying dagger was the most common method used to test the waters of a vehicle. If it succeeded, the vehicle would be destroyed and people would die. If it failed, there was no loss. It was just a basic method to test whether the vehicle was equipped with protective equipment. As the great death-courting senior, who was famous in the cultivation world, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had experienced all kinds of unexpected situations, so he was very aware in this regard. Brother Silver, can you sense the strength of this person? Asked Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Little Silver cupped his chin and thought for a moment before he quickly replied, probably as strong as 4 grenade-throwing seniors. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. When had he become a unit of measurement? But this person is a little weaker than Mr. Liu, so he's pretty easy to deal with. But we can't get out of the car now, right? Said Little Silver. It had to be said that Little Silver had brought up a critical issue: they couldn't get out of the car. That was because it was very dangerous for a car to stop midway on an air bridge unless it was waiting to get off. Whether or not it caused an accident, as long as it was caught on camera, the driver's license would be directly revoked. It was very difficult to get a driver's license nowadays. And it was now very clear that the other party wanted to take advantage of the fact that they couldn't get out of the car to take them down. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal gritted his teeth. He didn't want to sit around and wait for death. At that moment, an even more violent impact came from the side. Even with the double protection, the Triphibian off-road vehicle still shook violently and was almost swept off the road. It was still an invisible flying sword, but it was much more powerful than the previous one. The situation had become a little difficult. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal furrowed his brow tightly. Although it was still a probing attack this time, it was very clear that the invisible flying sword in the other party's hand wasn't his. And the truth was that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had guessed right again. On the other side, in the clouds that hid a faint murderous aura, a member of the Demon Hunters Association sat on a floating gourd. President Bai had given this gourd to him, and it had the ability to isolate space to a certain extent. In addition to Elder Liu, this person was Elder Zhuo Wu, the other senior member of the Demon Hunters Association. Today, Elder Zhuo Wu had come to seek revenge, because not long ago, his only younger brother, Strong Zhua, had been arrested, and the culprit was that green-furred dog. Strong's Wa had previously left a soul mark on that green-furred dog, which Wang Ling transferred to Little Silver. Later, President Bai had sent Mr. Liu to test the waters, but Mr. Liu's whereabouts were still unknown. Although it wasn't certain whether Mr. Liu had turned traitor or not, Elder Zhuo Wu already couldn't hold back his urge for revenge. He had applied to President Bai for this operation, and it had been approved very quickly. This time, President Bai had given him a floating gourd with the ability to isolate space to conceal himself, and had also given him a large number of disposable invisible flying swords, more than 600 of them, for him to use as he saw fit. After that, Elder Zhuo Wu had been looking for an opportunity to make his move. In daily life, the success rate of using invisible flying swords to launch a sneak attack wasn't high, and it was very easy to arouse suspicion. Thus, Elder Zhuo Wu had been waiting. Finally, the day had come when the targets would set out in a vehicle. Furthermore, the other party had actually driven the vehicle onto the sky bridge. Elder Zhuo Wu was well aware that you couldn't stop on the sky bridge. Thus, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. For Elder Zhuo Wu, this was a moving target. Furthermore, it would be best if he could destroy both the other party and the vehicle here, and make it look like a spontaneous combustion accident. Sitting on the floating gourd, Elder Zhuo Wu secretly observed and pondered. A moment later, he untied the brocade bag at his waist and patted it lightly. Over 100 disposable invisible flying swords flew out of the brocade bag, and the tips of the swords were uniformly aimed in the direction of the Triphibian off-road vehicle. The next second, Elder Zhuo Wu gave the order, "Infinite swords." Chapter 631. Over 100 invisible flying swords carried an immense pressure as they flew towards the off-road vehicle. This was a batch of invisible flying swords which President Bai of the Demon Hunters Association had specially ordered. With grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's eyesight, he couldn't see them at all, but Little Silver took in this spectacular scene. Wow! Look! Grenade throwing. A meteor shower. Little Silver couldn't help exclaiming in admiration. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Brother Silver, now isn't the time to be amazed, Little Silver, but, there are hundreds of swords flying this way now. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, more than 100 invisible flying swords descended from the sky with the aura of 10,000 arrows being shot at the same time. Each of these flying swords possessed the power of a cultivator at the pinnacle of the soul formation final stage. Just 2 probing attacks just then had almost broken through the Jeep's dual defenses. Now, over 100 flying swords were all aimed at the same target and unleashed a barrage of attacks. The SUV's defense alone definitely wouldn't be able to withstand them. Success! Elder Zhuo Wu was excited. He was about to get his revenge. Anyone would feel the same at that moment. But just as Elder Zhuo Wu thought that his grand plan was about to succeed, he suddenly saw the SUV's window actually open. Was it going to jump out of the car? No, on the floating gourd, Elder Zhuo Wu narrowed his eyes. Then, he suddenly saw something. The silver-haired young man in the front passenger seat suddenly spat out the window. Zhuo Wu sneered. In his eyes, this was just a useless resistance, a mouthful of phlegm. What else could he do apart from vent his frustration? Elder Zhuo Wu didn't believe that a mere mouthful of phlegm could break his infinite sword formation. But in the next moment, this mouthful of silver sputum actually blossomed like fireworks in the void, directly scattering in all directions. Elder Zhuo Wu, the moment those invisible flying swords came into contact with the phlegm, they instantly disintegrated and melted away. Elder Zhuo Wu. How could this be? Elder Zhuo Wu cried out in his heart. The destructive power of this mouthful of phlegm was so shocking that he almost couldn't stop roaring in his heart. However, before he could react, another 2 mouthfuls of silver phlegm flew out of the window and instantly exploded in the sky. It's over. Little Silver smiled slightly. The moment the silver phlegm exploded, all the flying swords in the sky were swept away like Minesweeper. Elder Zwo-Wu was so shocked that his mouth dropped open. At this moment, the expression on his face was one of extreme shock. It was an expression that he had never shown in his entire life. Damn it, to think that he could so easily resolve his attack, how could he cultivate? He had just lost a total of 200 Soul Formation Pinnacle disposable flying swords. It seemed that he had to use the Itinerant Immortal level Invisible Flying Sword. In fact, Elder Zwo-Wu had been selfish before. He wanted to save a few disposable invisible flying swords. President Bai had given him a total of 600 disposable invisible flying swords. 200 were at the peak late Soul Formation stage, 200 were at the early Itinerant Immortal stage, and 200 were at the late Itinerant Immortal stage. If he used all of them here, Elder Zwo-Wu would be a pain in the ass. But just as Elder Zwo-Wu gritted his teeth and prepared to launch an even more powerful second round of attacks, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him, and Elder Zwo-Wu's face instantly froze. You! The corner of Elder Zwo-Wu's mouth twitched. He was sitting on the floating gourd, and the space around him had been isolated, so he should have been able to conceal himself completely. But Elder Zwo-Wu had overlooked one thing, and that was Little Silver's perception ability was beyond imagination. Little Silver's phlegm didn't just have the effect of dissolving the invisible flying swords, it could also have a reverse tracking effect. This silver phlegm could connect to Little Silver's sensory nerves through the tremor and overall strength of the invisible flying swords, and in turn capture the approximate starting point of the invisible flying swords. But this was just a rough estimate of the flying sword's starting point. Because the space around Elder Zwo-Wu was currently isolated, even if Little Silver and Elder Zwo-Wu were extremely far apart, Little Silver still wouldn't be able to touch Elder Zwo-Wu. This was a clone, and it couldn't see him. After confirming that the other party couldn't find him, Elder Zwo-Wu finally breathed a sigh of relief, but the scene just now still made him break out in a cold sweat. But the question was, how on earth had the other party found him? Elder Zwo-Wu was very puzzled. Because he couldn't get out of the car, Little Silver had created a clone, intending to have a showdown with this Elder Zwo-Wu of the Demon Hunters Association. This person's overall strength was much weaker than Mr. Liu's, so Little Silver's clone was enough to deal with him. The only tricky thing was that the other party had used space to hide himself, which was exactly what Little Silver had guessed at the beginning. And it was very obvious that this ability wasn't Little Silver's, it was probably something that President Bai had given to this member of the Demon Hunters Association. Little Silver raised his eyebrows. After all, he was now on his way to Master's house, and he didn't want anything to happen to him. But the problem was, what on earth was he going to do in this situation? What would Master do? Little Silver pondered. At that moment, he suddenly remembered that he had already signed a contract. He should be able to get Master to help him out. It was very clearly written in the Spirit Beast, Holy Beast, contract, and Little Silver remembered that there was a clause. The contract beast could use the power of the contract to summon its master for help when necessary. It seemed that he hadn't used this contract ability even once before. Suddenly, Little Silver's lips curled up in a mischievous smile, and he really wanted to test how powerful the power of the contract was. On the other side, Elder Zwo-Wu's hair stood on end at the silver-haired young man's secretive, naughty smile. Although he was sure that this silver-haired young man couldn't see him, the question was, what was with this harmless smile? Elder Zwo-Wu didn't quite understand, but in the next moment, he suddenly saw this silver-haired young man actually lower his eyes and make a praying gesture with both hands, as if he was calling for something. About 10 seconds later, Elder Zwo-Wu's expression changed dramatically and he couldn't help tensing up. What's going on? Because at that moment, he felt a powerful spiritual pressure pressing down on him, shaking his entire body until his chi and blood flowed in reverse. The most powerful spiritual pressure pressed down on the narrow space he was in, and Elder Zwo-Wu's eyes instantly turned bloodshot. In the next second, Elders Wo saw a hand, which looked like a youngster's. Chapter 632. This was, at that moment, Elders Wo's expression changed dramatically. He couldn't believe the scene in front of him at all. This was a hand that had come from the void. It wasn't as large as he had imagined, but it gave him a great deal of pressure. Elders Wo hadn't come back to his senses at all. The next moment, he was grabbed by the collar. He couldn't resist at all. In front of this hand, it was as if he had been fixed in place, and it was as if all the blood in his body had been frozen. The moment he was pulled out of the space, Elders Wo felt like a salted fish that had been forcibly dragged out of the deep into the shallows. Blood suddenly gushed out of his nose like a fountain, and he was bleeding profusely. Holy shit! Little Silver was alarmed by this scene. The amount of blood was too much, like a hemorrhage, and it almost stained his clothes. Furthermore, he actually still had a collar hidden around his neck, which he had just bought for Master. Little Silver didn't want to be stained with blood like this. Not even if it was just a clone. Inside the Wong family's small villa, after helping Little Silver pull Elders Wo out, Wong Ling planned to wash his hands. Because of the different pressure in the space, Elders Wo couldn't withstand the pressure of the blood in his body for a moment, and blood instantly gushed out of his nose, directly causing some of it to stick to Wong Ling's hands. Wong Ling felt that this was a mistake on his part. He had acted in a hurry, and had forgotten that this hand of heaven technique had the effect of compressing space. When he had pulled Elders Wo out of the space, the change in pressure would have been enough to make a normal person spit out blood. Elders Wo was already lucky that he had only spat out green blood. If his realm had been lower, he would definitely have bled from all 7 orifices. In the end, Master is still the best. Little Silver couldn't help feeling a little emotional when he saw this scene up close. The opportunity to watch Master use spells up close was really too rare. This method of directly breaking open the space just now and pulling someone out was too powerful. Little Silver stared at Elders Wo, who had been directly pulled out of the space by Wong Ling. He crossed his arms and pouted as he looked at him with a smile. "Do you have anything else to say?" Little Silver actually didn't want to kill this Elders Wo, because he and Wong Ling had agreed that they wouldn't kill indiscriminately. In contrast, it was Elders Wo who looked panicked. What was that just now?" He wanted to know what on earth that terrifying hand was, to actually be able to directly pull him out of the space layer which President Bai had set up for himself in such a way that he didn't even have the slightest bit of respect for him. It was really too humiliating. After the Hand of Heaven attack just now, Elders Wo had already suffered serious internal injuries, so even though Little Silver was just a clone, it was still very easy for him to deal with him. "That's just a small skill of my master's." Little Silver spread his hands. Small skill," Elders Wo almost spat out blood. "Your family's little skill can directly pull people out of the space layer." That was obviously an extremely powerful technique. Thus, Elders Wo judged that the strength of the master behind this silver-haired young man was no less than that of President Bai. At this thought, Elders Wo couldn't help frowning. He had already lost this battle, so he had to think of a way to escape. Little Silver had initially wanted to keep Elders Wo alive. As one of the few high-level members of the Demon Hunters Association, this was a rare tongue. Given that President Bai's current whereabouts were unknown, he might be a breakthrough to get some information. "Little Silver, I don't want to kill you. If you're willing to come with me obediently, I can consider letting you go. You want to catch me in your dreams." Elders Wo grit his teeth, and a magic seal instantly blossomed in his hands as he actually used the blood he had spat out to condense into blood essence to cast a forbidden spell. Little Silver watched as this Elders Wo actually turned into a mummy right under his nose. In the SUV, Little Silver's real body projected the clone's image onto the small screen inside. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal saw through the nature of this forbidden spell at one glance. Is this a Western forbidden spell? A Western forbidden spell? What's that? Little Silver's real body cocked his head. It's a Western necromancy forbidden spell that can turn one's body into a zombie puppet at the cost of a certain amount of blood essence. However, this spell consumes a certain amount of lifespan, said Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. In fact, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't think this was strange, because according to what that mysterious informant on the forum had previously revealed, the power behind the Demon Hunters Association was a dark force from the West called Night Chief. So it wasn't strange for a member of the Demon Hunters Association to be able to cast a Western spell. But given that President Bai's whereabouts were unknown and there was no progress at all, the sudden appearance of this high-level leader made Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wonder if this was a turning point. Brother Silver, do you have a way to catch this person? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked very seriously. Little Silver's real body nodded quickly. Of course. Then, he quickly controlled his clone to chase after Elders Wu. This kind of spell, in which one's body could turn into a puppet substitute to escape, usually required a prop to be used. This prop could be a puppet, a doll, or a wax figure. Before this Elders Wu cast this forbidden spell, he had definitely already placed the prop in a safe place. Unfortunately, this kind of forbidden spell usually required blood as a medium, and it was too convenient for Little Silver to track down a spell that used blood as a medium. The moment Elders Wu had used the blood essence to cast this spell to escape, Little Silver had reacted almost instantly and subconsciously fused a drop of his blood with the blood essence that Elders Wu had used. Next, Little Silver would use the holy beast blood to track him. Thus, Elders Wu wouldn't be able to escape at all. No matter where he ran, Little Silver would be able to smell his drop of holy beast blood. On the other side, Elders Wu had escaped from death and instantly used the puppet substitute spell to fly thousands of li away. This was a spell that could only be used to save his life. As a high-level member of the Demon Hunters Association, Elders Wu had already thought of everything he could think of before taking his revenge, including life-saving measures. In order to cast the puppet substitute spell, Elders Wu had prepared a wax figure of his own in advance to use as a substitute. But Elders Wu never expected that he would actually have to use it. The great advantage of this puppet substitute spell was that it wouldn't be interrupted midway, which meant that it could escape the scene 100% of the time and avoid all kinds of sure-kill attacks. But there was also a limitation, and that was that as a prop to replace the original body, it couldn't be too far away from the original body. 1,000 kilometers was already the limit of the prop. Even if the other party sensed it and wanted to track it down, it would still take time, but just as Elders Wu was rejoicing that he had escaped disaster, a figure holding a black umbrella suddenly appeared in a corner. Suddenly, a figure holding a black umbrella appeared in the corner. I gave you 600 invisible flying swords. Why don't you use them all at once? Elders Wu's expression changed drastically at this voice. He turned his face and was so frightened that he immediately dropped to one knee on the ground. President Bai. Chapter 633. Elders Wu never expected President Bai to appear here. Furthermore, he was well aware that this wasn't President Bai's real body, but a clone. But even though it was just a clone, it still made him feel great pressure. He had bought this dark room in the basement of a high-class apartment in the center of Songhai City, and it was used to hide the wax figures. The dark room's predecessor was actually an underground supermarket. When Elders Wu had found this place back then, the underground supermarket had been sealed, and the sales staff in the residential area had been evasive. Distressed because they hadn't been able to find a tenant or a buyer, they had lowered the rent and price 3 times in a row. Elders Wu hadn't even checked before directly buying the place. It wasn't just because it was cheap, more importantly, the terrain here was extremely shady, which made it very suitable for casting a dark room to hide replacement puppet wax figures. Many forbidden spells didn't just require human intervention, the terrain was also very important. The location of this dark room was a big factor in Elder Zwolwoo's ability to instantaneously cast a spell to escape here. Truly useless good-for-nothings. At that moment, Elder Zwolwoo knelt in the middle with a defeated expression on his face, blood still dripping from the corners of his mouth. In front of him was a thin, deathly pale President Bai with a black umbrella in his hand. Even if it was just the power of a clone, that cold snort just now was still like rolling thunder that shook the bottom of Elder Zwolwoo's heart. Elder Zwolwoo couldn't help but bleed from his orifices. President Bai's cultivation was too high, far beyond what Elder Zwolwoo had imagined, and he felt a little overwhelmed. Was this the power of a true immortal? Sure enough, his every movement was accompanied by great majesty. Next to the young man stood a man whom Elder Zwolwoo had never seen before. He wore a purple Daoist robe and had heavy makeup on his face, which actually gave him the charm of a woman. He was a very beautiful man. Similarly, this man was also a clone. Elder Zwolwoo had never seen him before, but the fact that he could stand directly next to President Bai like this was enough to show that this person's status wasn't ordinary. Ji Xing, what do you think? President Bai called out the man's name lightly. If he had directly unleashed 600 flying swords from the very beginning, even if he couldn't kill the other side, he would still have suffered a loss. We can also make the other side suffer a loss. This beautiful young man called Ji Xing replied, so it's very clear that there's something wrong with this Elder Zwolwoo's thinking. Elder Zwolwoo gritted his teeth, a little unwilling. President Bai stared at this scene and frowned. Zwolwoo, what do you want to say? There's a powerful being behind the other side. He directly reached out and pulled me out of the space layer. There's nothing I can do. I hope the president can understand this. He is not an enemy this subordinate can deal with. Speaking up to this point, Elder Zwolwoo was very excited. He was still suffering from internal injuries from the impact of the Hand of Heaven, and coupled with President Bai's pressure now, he was so excited that his chi and blood couldn't help flowing in reverse. Blood spurted out from his nose again. The beautiful man called Ji Xing smiled coldly. Isn't this the result of you delaying the battle? President Bai and I guessed early on that the other party had an almighty overseeing it, which was why President Bai gave you 600 invisible flying swords at once. But what about you? You probably wanted to save the flying swords so that you could line your own pockets later and use them for something else, right? When Ji Xing said this, President Bai's face darkened. Zwolwoo had worked under him for many years and hadn't worked any shorter than Mr. Liu's, but in the end, there was still something wrong with his thinking. President Bai felt that Elder Zwolwoo had gone too far in thinking that he actually hadn't seized the opportunity of the ambush to directly kill the other party. Instead, he had been thinking about his own future interests. Thus, President Bai's expression was particularly solemn. Zwolwoo, you disappoint me. He clenched his fists so hard that they actually created a deafening explosion, which shook Elder Zwolwoo so much that his vision went black on the spot and he almost fainted. Elder Zwolwoo's injuries worsened. Even if he recovered from these kinds of injuries, there would be very serious sequelae. Furthermore, if he wasn't the slightest bit careful, he might be forever stuck at this realm in the future. Zwolwoo. The deathly pale young man stared at him with the eyes of a torturer from hell. You've worked under me for many years, and I've never done anything too extreme to you. But today's miscalculation was truly unforgivable. This is just a punishment. For the time being, I'll spare your life. Elder Zwolwoo couldn't care less about the blood gushing out of his orifices at all. He was sweating profusely and trembling all over. Then, he saw President Bai straightaway turn his back on him and say indifferently, Ji Xing, let's go. The pretty man next to President Bai didn't say anything. Before he left, he just cast a very pitiful glance at Elder Zwo before finally turning around and disappearing with President Bai. After the two of them left, Elder Zwo breathed a huge sigh of relief, as if the sound of thunder had calmed his anger. Damn it! Elder Zwo pounded the ground in pain. He couldn't forget the way that beautiful man called Ji Xing had looked at him like a pitiful worm before he left. Although he hadn't shown any expression, the heavy sense of ridicule in his eyes had already shattered Elder Zwo's self-esteem. Elder Zwo was very unhappy in his heart, but he couldn't find any reason to refute it. Because he had been analyzed correctly on every point. In the battle just now, he had indeed been selfish and wanted to leave behind a batch of invisible flying swords for later use. But at the same time, Elder Zwo hadn't expected the other party to actually have such a powerful almighty keeping watch. He could not forget the hand that had dragged him out of the space layer. That hand clearly looked like the hand of a youth. The skin was delicate and exquisite, but it gave off a strong oppressive feeling as if the sky was pressing down on him, as if it had infinite ruling power. Elder Zwo took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down and stop thinking about it. Right now, it was more important to recover from his injuries. He had used the puppet substitution spell to escape to this place, so in theory, no one could have known. No matter how strong that person was, there was no way he could have predicted that he would be hiding here, right? Cursing in his heart, Elder Zwo then took out a jade bottle from his chest pocket, which contained an entire bottle of Jinchuang Dahuan pills, which were used to recover from injuries in an emergency and could suppress internal injuries to the lowest level. But just as Elder Zwo poured the bottle of Dahuan pills into his mouth, the supermarket's iron gate actually burst open with a bang. Elder Zwo was so frightened that he directly spat out the Dahuan pill he hadn't swallowed. Chapter 634. This surprise is a little too big. Little Silver's appearance directly scared Elder Zwo so much that several blood vessels in his body burst one after another, and his injuries worsened. He didn't know how this silver-haired young man had found this place. At that moment, Elder Zwo's forehead was also covered in cold sweat, and he had no time to consider what method this silver-haired young man had used. Little Silver projected this scene into the SUV. Looking at the scene where Little Silver's clone was in, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal somehow felt that the surroundings of this underground supermarket seemed a little familiar. Wait a minute, wasn't this the place where that old devil and the Master of Shadow Stream hid and ordered takeout? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal carefully examined his surroundings to confirm that he wasn't seeing things. Then, he took a deep breath and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. History is indeed shockingly similar. In fact, it hadn't been long since the old devil had been arrested, and there had been a relatively long interrogation period between his imprisonment and his final sentence. Usually, it took around half a year to a year. But since the old devil's incident, quite a number of people had already entered Songhai First Prison. The younger sister of the Master of Shadow Stream, Jiang Luiying, had been the first to enter, followed by the old devil and the Master of Shadow Stream herself, Jiang Luiwei. After that, Master of Immortal Mansion Qing Yu and Evil Sword God were also sent to prison. As key prisoners, they were put in spirit shackles and locked in the same special cell as the old devil. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was suddenly a little curious about what it would be like if President Bai was also arrested. 3 people could only play Fight the Landlord, but 4 people could play Mahjong. Brother Silver, keep him alive. This is a good chance to catch President Bai, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said as he drove the SUV steadily. Little Silver nodded. Okay, I'll do my best. Although this was just a clone and Little Silver couldn't unleash his full strength, Elder Zwo's current injuries were too severe. If the other party struggled or resisted, his injuries could worsen and his life wouldn't be in danger. So Little Silver had initially wanted to try persuading her first. I can instantly heal your internal injuries without leaving any after effects. Are you willing to come with me? Little Silver stared at Elder Zwo and raised his condition. An internal injury of this degree could be completely healed with just a few drops of sacred beast blood. But Elder Zwolwoo's eyes were full of resistance, and it was very clear that he had no intention of surrendering. Although Little Silver's offer was indeed very tempting, Elder Zwolwoo wasn't a fool. Judging from the silver-haired young man's attitude toward him, it was clear that the other party didn't want to kill him. Instead, the other party was trying to persuade him to surrender and give up information on the Demon Hunters Association and President Bai. Elder Zwolwoo now suddenly understood a little why Mr. Lu's whereabouts were unknown. In view of the other party's methods, it was very likely that Mr. Lu had already been persuaded to surrender and was being closely protected as a tainted witness. Mr. Lu, you've already hidden him, haven't you? Elder Zwolwoo clutched his chest, where his chi and blood were surging. The moment he spoke, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help raising his eyebrows. He seemed to understand a little why President Bai was still willing to keep this Elder Zwolwoo by his side despite his mediocre realm. It was precisely because this Elder Zwolwoo was very smart. Sometimes, a high realm didn't mean a good strategy. Any expert who was difficult to deal with would definitely have a strategist at their side. It was very obvious that Elder Zwolwoo was this type of person. Unfortunately, there were times when this kind of person would often be the victim of his own cleverness. The best proof of this smart Elder Zwolwoo's miscalculation was that he had been planning to hide the invisible flying sword and hadn't chosen to use it all. Although Little Silver didn't say anything, Elder Zwolwoo already knew the answer from the look in his eyes. His eyes were fixed on Little Silver, and even in this dire situation, he didn't show the slightest hesitation. I advise you to give up. My rank in the association is the same as Mr. Lu's, but I definitely won't surrender as easily as he did. In the end, a demon is a demon, they'll surrender when they're afraid, and they don't have the slightest backbone. But if you think I'm in cahoots with those demons, then you're gravely mistaken. Little Silver pouted. He hadn't expected this Elder Zwolwoo to actually be so strong-willed. You have no idea how long I've been by President Bai's side. Elder Zwolwoo clenched his fists tightly. He didn't care at all whether other people understood him or not. Back then, when he was at his lowest, it was President Bai who took him in, and it was all because of President Bai that he was able to reach his current realm. He was one of the earliest members of the Demon Hunters Association when it was first established, and he had spent a lot of time building it up. Elder Zwolwoo had thought that he could already become President Bai's confidant, but he never thought that there would actually be a beautiful man standing next to President Bai whom he had never seen before. Elder Zwolwoo thought that he had a list of all the elders of the Demon Hunters Association in his little notebook, but this Ji Xing, who on earth was he? He had done so much for the president for so many years, but he still hadn't gained President Bai's complete trust. Elder Zwolwoo's heart ached as he felt a chill run down his spine. He had clearly been here first. How could he be so familiar with the president? The more he thought about it, the more agitated he became. At first, his heart wavered a little, but in the end, he was so angry that he couldn't stop trembling, and even his eyes turned blood red. There was something very wrong with this state, and Little Silver frowned deeply. Do you know? Elder Zwolwoo's eyes were red as he stared at Little Silver. Little Silver. I can die for the president. Elder Zwolwoo said resolutely. Little Silver sweated. Bro, you have to calm down, bro. However, Elder Zwolwoo already couldn't listen to him anymore. His entire face had already changed at the question in his heart just now. Even his state of mind had changed. The look in the eyes of that man called Ji Xing before he left seemed to haunt him like a nightmare. Elder Zwolwoo sneered, and his face, which was purple and white because of his internal injuries, had a cold expression that made Little Silver's hair stand on end. Don't even think about getting any information from me. I will use my death to prove my loyalty to the president. As soon as he said that, Elder Zwolwoo actually put his hand directly into his pants and took out a magic artifact the size of a marble. This was the Tian-Gang Thunder. It was a very rare explosive magic artifact which contained the heavenly tribulation lightning of a soul formation cultivator's tribulation, and was extremely powerful. If Elder Zhuo Wu really died, Lord President would probably be very sad, right? Ji Xing sneered. Sad. Perhaps, if I have time in the future, I'll go to Zhuo Wu's grave to light incense for him on New Year's and other festivals. President Bai said, we don't have much time left. This is all for the smooth execution of the master plan. Elder Ji Xing raised his eyebrows. He knew what the master plan President Bai was talking about was. This master plan was the ultimate goal of the Demon Hunters Association in expanding its power in Huaxiao Nation all these years. Everything was for the sake of obtaining the Grade 13 spell, Moon Burial spell, which Devil King had left behind in Beast King's remains back then. As long as they could obtain this world-destroying spell, everything would be under the control of the Demon Hunters Association and Night Chief. Since they were planning for great things, appropriate sacrifices were necessary. For the sake of the Moon Burial plan, Night Chief had already put in a lot of effort from the moment they set up the Demon Hunters Association in Huaxiao Nation. At that moment, President Bai stared at the image from his eyeball on the monitor and smiled mysteriously. You're right this time, Ji Xing, my judgment has always been accurate. The limitless umbrella in the president's hand was forged by me. Since I was the one who made this Wuji umbrella in Lord President's hand, I naturally have a special sensitivity to materials. Back then, I used 49 pieces of holy beast fur to forge this Wuji umbrella. Even after I finished refining it, there are still some flaws, but now... Ji Xing smiled and stared at the silhouette of the silver-haired young man in the monitor. From the looks of it, we can finally make up for this shortcoming. In order to obtain Devil King's level 13 technique, the ultimate umbrella is also the key. Looking at the monitor image again, the two of them could already see Elder Zhuo Wu take out the Tian-Gang grenade from his crotch with an excited expression on his face. Brother Silver, is there a way to stop him? At the same time, in the SUV, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was also looking at the image projected by Little Silver's clone. He had wanted Little Silver to try and stop him, but he couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Sometimes, a person's imagination was just too terrifying. Little Silver actually hadn't said anything at all, but this Elder Zhuo Wu had already started to get excited, as if it was useless no matter who tried to persuade him. Then, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal saw the resolute look in Elder Zhuo Wu's eyes. There was a strong sense of déjà vu in the sect leader's righteous decision to sacrifice himself for the sake of everyone else when the 6 major sects besieged Light Sect. Because of his family's connection to the Tang sect, a major hidden weapons sect, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had a certain understanding of hidden weapons. If the Tian-Gang grenade was detonated at a distance, it wouldn't kill you. But the problem now was that Elder Zhuo Wu was seriously injured, and if it was detonated at such a close distance, he would undoubtedly die. No way, this Elder Zhuo Wu had to be saved. Although Little Silver's holy beast blood could heal injuries, it couldn't completely bring people back to life. There was only one way. While driving, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was quick-witted and immediately texted Wang Ling, Brother Ling. Are you there? It's urgent. I know you're spying. Wang Ling replied almost instantly, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, it's an emergency. I've caught an elder of the Demon Hunters Association, and he wants to commit suicide. Do you have a way to bring him back to life? Wang Ling's reply was very simple. Restricted access, I can't get out. It was obvious that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had already expected this. Then can I ask Brother Ling to help me deliver something to Brother Silver's clone? Wang Ling, ? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal replied with 2 words, Soul Suppression Ring. This was the only way he could think of to bring Elder Zhuo Wu back to life unscathed. Wang Ling, It's just a transmission. It shouldn't be broken, right, brotherling? Grenade-throwing senior immortal reluctantly took off the soul suppression ring. I bought 100 million yuan insurance. Chapter 636. 100 million yuan for insurance. Because of the restrictions on pocket money, it was actually very hard for most kids Wang Ling's age to imagine what 100 million yuan was like. They only knew that it was a huge sum of money. Wang Ling sighed in his heart. Why did he have to use 100 million yuan for insurance? Even if the ring was destroyed, as long as he provided the raw materials for a few million, he could make a dozen more. That was 100 million yuan. How many crispy noodle snacks could he buy with that? He could even open a noodle factory to produce and sell it himself. Wang Ling felt that this was a very extravagant and wasteful act. It wasn't right. 100 million yuan. What a pity, but maybe this was what a big shot was like. After all, for big shots, 100 million yuan was just a small target. On the other side, Elder Zhuo Wu was already fully prepared to die a heroic death. This Tiangang grenade actually didn't do much damage to Little Silver. Strictly speaking, it couldn't even hurt his clone at all. At most, it would cause some superficial damage. Furthermore, even Little Silver's clone actually had an extremely strong self-healing ability, and would be able to recover very quickly. Holding the Tiangang grenade, Elder Zhuo Wu had a resolute expression on his face as he prepared to die a heroic death, just like those Huaxiao anti-Yang heroes from thousands of years ago. Little Silver had been watching Huaxiao's domestic TV series recently. When Sun Island invaded Huaxiao thousands of years ago, there were countless domestic Huaxiao anti-Yang heroes. The moment the Yang devils had charged into the battlefield, many of them had died bravely with grenades in hand. They had become national heroes who were praised and revered by the people. At that moment, Little Silver felt that the resolute look in Elder Zhuo Wu's eyes was exactly like what he saw in a TV series. It was too lifelike. Elder Zhuo Wu should have the talent to be an actor, right? While Little Silver's thoughts were running wild, he saw a large hand reach out from nothingness, the hand of God. It was Master's hand. Master had sent grenade-throwing senior immortal's ring. Little Silver was suddenly very excited. He felt that this hand was very beautiful, the bones of the fingers were distinct and flawless, like an extremely exquisite piece of jade porcelain. Little Silver was a little dazed as he looked at the hand, and then he couldn't help swallowing. For some reason, he actually had the urge to lick it. Little Silver was now looking forward more and more to the day when Master would tie a rope around his collar and take him for a stroll on the street. Being held by such a beautiful pair of hands for a stroll, what a beautiful scene. While he was pondering this, grenade-throwing senior immortal's soul suppression ring had already been delivered to Elder Zhuo Wu. This was the second time Elder Zhuo Wu had seen Wang Ling's hand, and he was scared out of his wits. Get out of my way. Even if I, Zhuo Wu, die today, I'll drag you down with me. Saying that, Elder Zhuo Wu crushed the bead in his hand, and the Tiangang grenade detonated on the spot. The deafening sound of thunder blew up the entire underground supermarket, directly turning it into dust. The power of the Tiangang thunder was enormous. If it was detonated here, the entire building would be blown through. But it just so happened that Wang Ling's hand of heaven was there to erase the powerful aftermath of the explosion, so the situation didn't look so serious. On the monitor above the building, President Bai and Elder Ji Xing stood up. In the instant of the explosion, the Eye of Nothingness had also been destroyed, and the image on the monitor turned into a blur. The Tiangang grenade had indeed detonated, and they had all felt the apartment building tremble just now. But in theory, the power of the Tiangang grenade should have been enough to make the entire building collapse. The person behind this must have made a move again. President Bai narrowed his eyes. Since the other party had the formidable strength to tear the space apart, he reckoned that it would be more than enough to withstand the aftermath of the explosion. Elder Ji Xing nodded, then quickly closed his eyes. After sensing for a bit, he said with a teasing smile, "But even so, the other party can't prevent Elder Zhuo Wu's death. Everything is as President Bai predicted. Elder Zhuo Wu's aura has disappeared, and he died a rather tragic death." President Bai took a deep look at the ground under his feet, and the expression on his face said that the outcome had been decided. "All right, let's go." As soon as he turned around, Elder Ji Xing moved closer to him, and the small black umbrella floating in the air behind him suddenly started to spin at that moment. It slowly grew larger and covered the top of their heads with a black light. Finally, it disappeared. About 2 or 3 minutes after President Bai left, Elder Zhuo Wu, who had already been blown to ashes by the Tiangang grenade, let out a pained cry. "Damn it! That hurts." Only now did he realize how painful it was to be blown up by a thunderbolt. It really hurt too much. It felt like his whole body was splitting apart. Wait. It looked like he was already splitting apart. But why was he still conscious? Logically speaking, this shouldn't be the case. The Tiangang grenade was extremely destructive. Once a person's body was destroyed, even their soul would be destroyed by the aftermath of the Tiangang grenade. Logically speaking, it was impossible for him to be conscious. Could it be that it was because his obsession was too deep that another kind of supernatural phenomenon had caused him to become an earthbound spirit? Elder Zhuo Wu was very shocked at this unexpected turn of events, because this was already beyond his scope of consideration. He was already dead, but it also seemed like he wasn't. Although he still couldn't move, the scene in front of him was fixed on the supermarket that had already been blown to smithereens. The most important thing was that the silver-haired young man was still standing in front of him and hadn't left from beginning to end. That Tiangang grenade just now actually hadn't caused the slightest bit of harm to this silver-haired young man at such a close range. Elder Zhuo Wu felt that he had used a stupid and wasteful method of suicide. What on earth was going on? Elder Zhuo Wu had no idea what was going on at all. He only saw the sand floating in the air around him reassembling itself bit by bit along with the flesh. Elder Zhuo Wu. Right after that, an incredible scene happened. Elder Zhuo Wu, who had already been blown to ashes by the Tiangang grenade, found that his body was actually being reconstructed bit by bit. Every strand of hair was exactly the same as when he had been alive, and what was even more amazing was that even his internal injuries were completely healed. And what shocked Elder Zhuo Wu the most was that his Daoist robe, which should have been destroyed by the explosion, was actually being restored as well. It was only in that instant that Elder Zhuo Wu realized that he hadn't died. He had probably been brought back to life by some kind of power. Little Silver slowly walked over to Elder Zhuo Wu and picked up the soul suppression ring on the ground. While the Tiangang grenade was ferocious, the soul suppression ring was, in the end, a world-defying magic weapon. This level of damage couldn't harm it at all. Little Silver took out a wet wipe from his pocket and wiped the inside and outside of the soul suppression ring. He then watched Elder Zhuo Wu's body recover bit by bit, and he couldn't help smiling at him. That explosion just now must have hurt a lot, right? If you don't believe it, you can blow it up a few more times. In any case, you definitely won't die. Chapter 637. Elder Zhuo Wu never thought that he would actually be completely resurrected. Even his internal injuries had been healed, and he was brimming with energy and vigor. He didn't need to guess to know that this had to be the strength of that almighty senior who had directly dragged him out of the space layer with one hand. To actually be able to bring someone back from the dead, what kind of formidable power was this? Elder Zhuo Wu's gaze couldn't help focusing on the simple black ring in Little Silver's hand. He didn't know its origin, but he was sure that it was the ring's power that had brought him back to life. A magic ring with a resurrection attribute. it was obvious that it had to have been made by that senior behind the scenes. When he had seen a pair of big hands appear earlier, it had to be this senior who had delivered the ring. Looking at Elderswold Wu's stupefied face, Little Silver couldn't help spreading his hands. This is all basic, no need to be too shocked. My master actually doesn't need a ring to bring people back to life. Bring people back to life without a magic artifact. Elderswold Wu's heart shook. Could it be that your master is the embodiment of heavenly Tao? But in the end, Elderswold Wu didn't dare ask directly, because he had already realized that his strength and that of the almighty senior behind the scenes weren't in the same dimension at all. This almighty senior was even more powerful than President Bai. Even President Bai couldn't create a magic artifact with a resurrection attribute. As far as Elderswold Wu knew, there was a resurrection spell, but it had long been lost. Furthermore, when he recalled his experience of being resurrected just now, it was more like the power of this resurrection ring had frozen his soul in place and directly used it as a foundation to recreate a brand new body. It wasn't hard for Elderswold Wu to determine this, because he had been conscious throughout the resurrection process. As for what Little Silver said about being able to bring people back to life without a magic artifact, Elderswold Wu felt that he had no reason not to believe it. This was a power that was in a completely different dimension. At that moment, Elderswold Wu didn't even dare think about what level that senior was at. I'm very curious. After experiencing death by self-detonation once, Elderswold Wu had calmed down. Given the strength of this senior behind the scenes, it should be easy for him to kill President Bai if he wants to uphold justice. Why go through so much trouble? Because this is a society ruled by law. Little Silver replied swiftly. Elderswold Wu was lost in thought at this response, and he had nothing to say in response. Although Little Silver hadn't been with Wang Ling for long, he had learned a lot about the rules of human society. Most of the time, one's worldview would be influenced by one's surroundings. Little Silver had always felt that following Wang Ling unswervingly was the right decision. As Elderswold Wu had said, given Master's methods, it would be a piece of cake for him to get rid of President Bai. But in the current situation, they had to send this President Bai to prison alive to play mahjong, which was much more difficult than just getting rid of him. Because there were still too many unknown secrets about President Bai. Sitting cross-legged, Elderswold Wu looked inside his brand-new body. As expected, the curse mark which President Bai had originally carved into his body had disappeared. This curse was used to prevent members of the Demon Hunters Association from divulging the organization's secrets, but it was only effective on humans. Among the many high-level members of the Demon Hunters Association, only Mr. Liu was a demon. Now that Elderswold Wu thought about it carefully, he felt that the reason President Bai kept Mr. Liu by his side all this time was probably to prevent Mr. Liu from carelessly divulging the secret. Everything made sense now. Elderswold Wu sighed in his heart as he recalled President Bai's furious demand to find Mr. Liu as soon as possible when there was no news of him a while ago. Since you already have Mr. Liu's statement, why do you still insist on finding me? Elderswold Wu asked as he stared at Little Silver. After all, Mr. Liu is a demon, and humans and demons walk different paths. Even if Mr. Liu has some information on the Demon Hunters Association, it's definitely limited, right? Little Silver replied. Hearing this, Elderswold Wu's body shook. He never expected this seemingly harmless silver-haired young man, who seemed a little otherworldly, to actually be a guy with a pretty high IQ. In fact, this was indeed the case. President Bai hadn't told Mr. Liu everything, and the truth was that Mr. Liu knew very little. It was actually grenade-throwing senior immortal who had taught Little Silver everything in the car. Elderswold Wu sighed deeply. Since you want to know so much, then leave. I'm willing to tell you the truth. I've already lost this fight. You admit defeat just like that? I thought you'd resist a few more times. You should still have the Tian gang grenades on you, right? Why don't you blow them up a few more times? When they exploded just now, the lightning tribulation inside was like fireworks. I think it was really pretty. Little Silver's eyes widened. Elders Wo Wu realized that this silver-haired young man seemed a little dim-witted. I'm indebted to President Bai, so I really couldn't betray him before. In order to keep this secret, I could even sacrifice my life. But I've already died once, so I don't owe him anything, Elders Wo Wu said lightly. His words were very clear, but Little Silver didn't let down his guard. In the SUV, after confirming that Elders Wo Wu had surrendered, Little Silver used his clone to keep an eye on Elders Wo Wu as he immediately took out his phone and started to type a text message. Out of the corner of his eye, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal glanced at the recipient of Little Silver's text message and felt that the number was a little familiar. Who are you texting? Little Master, Little Silver replied quickly. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was blank. Master was Wang Ling, but who was Little Master? Brother Silver, is this Little Master related to Brother Ling? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked. Of course, isn't Little Master the scapegoat for Master? Little Silver replied. Realization dawned on Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. So this Little Master was talking about Jua. What freaking Little Master? After Little Silver stayed by Elders Wo Wu's side for about 10 minutes, the police were the first to arrive on the scene. Because of the thunderstorm caused by the Tiangang thunder, the residents in the neighborhood had been alarmed, and a number of fire trucks and police cars had swiftly sealed off the basement of this apartment building. Although the basement was already a mess, when the police and firefighters arrived, none of them took action. That was because before they had arrived, Warden Liang had called from the top to tell them to follow Director Zhua's arrangements. Zhua had been the chief commander of President Bai's case from the very beginning, so it was quite reasonable for him to be in charge of this matter. That's the situation, Mr. Little Silver. Director Zhua will be here soon. The district police captain saluted Little Silver. On the side, Elders Wo Wu, who was sitting cross-legged, raised his eyelids lazily. Director Zhua. Who is this? He thought the name sounded a little familiar. My little master, Little Silver replied. Very strong. Of course. The master of Shadow Stream, Devil Emperor Guo Pai and the master of Immortal Mansion all fell at his hands. Chapter 638. Elders Wo Wu was more well-behaved than Little Silver had imagined. Before Jua had arrived, he had been sitting cross-legged on the spot and hadn't made any strange movements. Little Silver was worried that Elders Wo Wu was feigning surrender, so he had been using his perception to check if there were any fluctuations of spirit energy coming from Elders Wo Wu. He was worried that Elders Wo Wu would tip President Bai off, so he had been on guard. Even if it was a small communication spell, there would still be spiritual power overflowing when the spell was cast. But Elders Wo Wu looked like he had completely surrendered and wasn't putting up any resistance at all. Brother Little Silver, you've worked hard. Leave the rest to me. Jua and Little Silver took over. The moment he saw Jua shackle Elders Wo Wu with the spirit shackles, Little Silver heaved a sigh of relief. The spirit shackles were the same treasure that had been used to capture the old devil previously. As long as it was worn, it could completely suppress even the power of a true immortal. But rather than saying that it suppressed power, it was better to say that it suppressed the circulation of spirit energy and prevented it from forming hand seals. Its function was like a spirit energy remover. It was a magic artifact that could forcibly suppress the output of spirit energy. The structure of the spirit shackles was even more complicated than that of the spirit energy remover. Not counting the other components, there were already 6 spirit energy removers sealed inside the spirit shackles. Hence, the development of the spirit shackles had always been quite troublesome. After the old devil's arrest, Huaxiao Nation's Cultivation Academy of Science only had 1 spirit shackles left. Then, the master of Immortal Mansion had been arrested, and the number of spirit shackles had officially come to an end. The one that Elderswoe Wu was wearing now was one of the ones that the Academy of Science had just produced after working overtime. As far as Audjwa knew, there actually weren't many in stock. Apart from the one that Elderswoe Wu was wearing, there was only one new spirit shackles that the Research Institute had produced. If it wasn't for Elderswoe Wu's suicidal tendencies, Audjwa wouldn't have brought the spirit shackles with him. But given the current situation, it was better to be cautious before Elderswoe Wu was officially taken into custody. As Audjwa thought this, he directed someone to take Elderswoe Wu to the prison car. Songhai First Prison had a powerful barrier to suppress prisoners, so after Elderswoe Wu was taken inside, there was actually no need to wear the spirit shackles. An artifact like the spirit shackles should only be given to prisoners who were at the level of playing mahjong. This sudden incident, which started with Elderswoe Wu taking the lead, finally came to an end with his arrest. Audjwa hadn't leaked the news to the media, but had done his best to suppress it. President by now mistakenly believed that Elderswoe Wu was already dead, which was a very good smokescreen. Perhaps it could be used as a strategic layout to set President by up. Inside the prison car, Audjwa sat next to Elderswoe Wu with a calm and composed look on his face, which made Elderswoe Wu feel a little embarrassed. Even if he was wearing the spirit shackles, he was still a murderer who had a certain level of martial arts skills. This person was actually completely unafraid of him. When all was said and done, he was someone who had weathered great storms. Feeling a little uncomfortable under Elderswoe Wu's gaze, Audjwa frowned and looked back at him. You have the right to remain silent. Elderswoe Wu was silent for a while, then couldn't help asking, are you really only at the Golden Core stage? This was what Elderswoe Wu was very curious about. Generally speaking, none of Huaxio's leading cadres were lower than the nascent Soul stage, and at the Golden Core stage, they were at most police captains or something like that. If a leading Golden Core cadre didn't have any meritorious service, it was actually very easy for people to think that he had gone through the back door. But the problem was that it was harder for an ordinary Golden Core cultivator to achieve meritorious service than to reach the sky. So how this director Zhua had been able to help capture the Master of Shadow Stream, the Old Devil, the Master of Immortal Mansion and Evil Sword God back then was a rather mystical question. Audjwa smiled. What? Are you looking down on Golden Core cultivators? In fact, Elderswoe Wu wasn't the only one who had asked this question, so Audjwa was already used to it. Since he had taken office, there had actually been no end to all kinds of talk about him, but he wasn't flustered at all. Audjwa still remembered how he had inexplicably killed the Demon King back then and become deputy director. At that time, he had indeed felt very flustered. But that feeling had now disappeared. Because he was well aware that he had a very powerful Shifu. When the prison car was about to reach Songhai First Prison, Elderswoe Wu asked curiously, are Devil Emperor Guo Pai, the Master of Immortal Mansion and Evil Sword God really locked up there? Every time, and they're all locked up in the same special cell. Audjwa nodded. Why, do you still want to get their autographs? Elderswoe Wu looked as if he had been hit on the nail on the head, and he stared at Audjwa longingly. Can I? Audjwa smiled slightly. Don't even think about it. You're too weak to be locked up with them. Elderswoe Wu, Audjwa, but if you're willing to tell me the truth, I can help you get their autographs. Elderswoe Wu, this was a move that Audjwa had just thought of, and had been inspired by his Shifu Wang Ling. Why was Loopy Toad so rich? Actually, a lot of the money had been given to it by Audjwa, who had asked it to record Wang Ling's daily life at home so that it could comprehend it. What realm was Shifu at? His every word and deed was worth pondering. A while ago, Audjwa had asked Loopy Toad to write down all the exercise papers that Wang Ling had bought, and Audjwa had run to the bookstore to buy the exact same ones, and had started to do the exercises. Although it had been many years since he had graduated, Audiobook firmly believed that his Shifu definitely had a reason for doing these exercises. The Shifu showed the way, but it was up to the individual to cultivate. Audiobook had to work harder. Like this time, when he had used Wang Ling's autograph to tempt Elder Zhuo Wu into confessing, Audiobook had comprehended the deal Wang Ling had made with the Heavenly Tao a few hours ago. Equivalent exchange. Not only was this suitable for dealing with the Heavenly Tao, it was also suitable for inducing confessions. At around 8:00 in the evening, Little Silver and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal successfully arrived at the Wang family's small villa. When they entered, Mother Wang was overjoyed. "Yo, Miss Silver, you're here." Mother Wang had always firmly believed that this fair-faced girl was a girl, and Grenade-throwing brought me here. Little Silver nodded. He didn't find it strange that Mother Wang had misunderstood his gender. This was Master's Lord Mother, and he didn't care at all about gender misunderstandings if he could make her so happy. "Where's Grenade-throwing? Why don't you come in and sit down? He has something to do, so he's going back first." Little Silver waved his hand, then took out 2 large sacks of broccoli from his storage bag. "Grenade-throwing just planted these broccoli recently. They're all for Senior." Mother Wang dropped her forehead. "That's too much." Actually, there was already more than they could eat at home. Chapter 639. Although Little Silver was usually brainless, he was right about one thing, and that was the main reason why Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hadn't come through the door this time. In fact, the main reason was still broccoli. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt that he had brought too little. Old man Yuan Longping, the founder of Magic Rice, didn't even need Jinkla to be able to produce 180 million kilograms of immortal rice per mu in the extremely dry and uninhabitable desert of death. What kind of formidable planting technique was this? And most importantly, the old man hadn't applied for a patent for this technique at all. If he had, he would have become the richest man in the world, but he hadn't. That was because from the very beginning, the old man's goal had been to benefit all of humanity. What kind of formidable spiritual realm was this? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt that he was completely out of his league. When Little Silver went upstairs, he found that Dog 2 was already waiting for him. Master was reading at his desk, and Little Silver didn't dare disturb him at all, because Loopy Toad had already told him earlier that it was a taboo to disturb Master when he was reading or revising. Little Silver was a little disappointed in his heart. He had brought his collar and leash. But given the current situation, he couldn't use them at all. It looked like he would have to look for an opportunity later. Dog 2 made a silencing gesture with its paw, then wagged its tail and led Little Silver to the bathroom. Because it had already used Lord Ma once before, Dog 2 was already very familiar with how to activate Lord Ma. Since Wang Ling had been there once before, Lord Ma had already recorded Drought Star's coordinates. This time, when Loopy Toad went over again, Lord Ma could also teleport immediately. When Little Silver followed Dog 2 over and saw the toilet lid slowly open, he had an indescribably shocked expression on his face. "Is this Master's enlightened toilet monster?" "Loopy Toad, Lord Ma, Loopy Toad, you have to call me Lord Ma." "Little Silver, do I need to do anything during the teleportation? Do you want to drink water?" Lord Ma almost fainted when he heard this. They were both contract beasts. Why was this holy beast so stupid? "Loopy Toad, no need, just wait for the transmission. A golden teleportation light will fall on your head later." Little Silver nodded his head. "Is that so?" Little Silver had actually seen a lot of teleportation magic artifacts before, but most of them had built-in arrays. However, Little Silver didn't see the slightest trace of an array on Lord Ma. Little Silver was very surprised by this. At that moment, on Drought Star on the other side, Immortal Jin Yuan was already halfway through his planet's restoration work. Although Wind Spirit had been the cause of such massive damage, Immortal Jin Yuan was now using the primordial qi stored in the Heart Demon Stone to repair the planet. Not only was he atoning for his own carelessness in creating the Heart Demon Wind Spirit back then, he was also washing away Wind Spirit sins. Fortunately, the formation of the inner demon was still in the middle stage. Before it completely devoured the main body, it couldn't be too far away from the main body. Thus, Immortal Jin Yuan had always been trying his best to stay away from the human world to prevent the inner demons from plotting against him and committing an unforgivable crime of murder. But in the last few thousand years, because Wind Spirit had used the gate between worlds without permission, there had been a misunderstanding between the demon world and the human world, which had resulted in huge losses for both sides. Immortal Jin Yuan had already thought of a way to make up for this. He was going to contact the human cultivators after Drought Star was repaired and donate it to them. He hoped that Drought Star would become the first third planet suitable for both the human world and the demon world to live in peace. Immortal Jin Yuan wiped at his sweat and floated in the air as he looked at the progress of Drought Star's restoration. Drought Star's surface was now basically complete. Furthermore, Immortal Jin Yuan had repaired the dry and cracked land that had been lacking water to begin with. It was as if he had added a layer of abrasion to it. Furthermore, while the restoration work had been carried out, Immortal Jin Yuan hadn't forgotten to set up a water magic array in the drier areas on Drought Star's surface to ensure that the land here was moist enough. Immortal Jin Yuan had been busy these days repairing the Earth's surface and building a more stable ecological environment at the same time. Hands on his hips, Immortal Jin Yuan nodded in satisfaction. Now, the only thing left is to repair the space cracks. That was because the space cracks caused by the collisions of high-level spells had been torn apart. This was a more troublesome restoration project than repairing the Earth. Thus, Immortal Jin Yuan planned to carry out a unified treatment after the land was completely repaired. The space cracks on Drought Star were actually not as bad as in the demon world. Although space repairs were a little complicated, Immortal Jin Yuan estimated that he would be able to finish them in about a month. Immortal Jin Yuan took out a map which he had drawn when he had been repairing Drought Star's surface. He had already marked out all the places where space cracks had appeared. Let's start with the place closest to us. Immortal Jin Yuan sighed, and after confirming the nearest repair target, he directly flew over. But Immortal Jin Yuan frowned at the scene in front of him, because he realized that there were actually two openings in this space. If there were two openings, he would have marked them on the map back then. Is this a new crack? Chin in hand, Immortal Jin Yuan frowned slightly as he gazed at the crack. Just as he was about to go forward to take a look, his entire body jerked and he immediately fell back. Even the expression on his face changed. He sensed a strange aura. There was an indescribable smell of danger coming from the space crack in front of him. What's that? Immortal Jin Yuan frowned because the smell coming from the space crack didn't smell like demon qi or spirit qi. Instead, it was a little like the primordial qi, which he didn't have much left in his body at the moment. Could it be? Immortal Jin Yuan frowned as he muttered to himself. He thought of one possibility, which was what second-generation demon saint had described previously in the holy palace of the demon world, which was a vicious beast-level monster that had poured out of a mysterious space crack. Immortal Jin Yuan thought of himself as a more meticulous person. If he had known that there were two space rifts here when he had drawn the map back then, there was no way he would have just marked one on the map. This strange space rift was new, and there was an extremely dangerous aura inside it. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.